teacher at Madede Primary School in Alego Usonga was irregularly dismissed from the service. Questions by Honorable MP for Alego Usonga will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Matters Education. Honorable Moses Cheboy is in the chamber, signaling that the business of the House is starting now. I'm now handing over for the live broadcast. Enjoy your viewing. Good morning.
Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu. Tutakusii tutazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako, ambayo umeridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri hii yetu. Haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Other members, we are short of the required numbers. Therefore, I order the bell to be rung for 10 minutes.
The Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Cheboy, currently presiding over the business of the House this morning, has directed that the quorum bell be rung for 10 minutes. And this is to allow for more members access the chamber to allow the House transact business this morning. There being a full entry for members during this particular session, where a couple of bills have been lined up for debate. In the highlights in the order of business this morning, the MP for Alego Usonga, Samuel Atandi, besides asking the Cabinet Secretary, or rather the Teacher Service Commission, about the payment of a former teacher at Madede Primary School, will also be asking the TSC to explain why it is yes to reinstate Mr. Owino to the service, even after the Magistrate Court, sitting in Siaya, acquitted him on the 29th of June, the year being 2018, for the accusations by the Teacher Service Commission on the basis of lack of evidence. Could the Cabinet Secretary also provide timelines when the Commission will reinstate Mr. Owino back to the service? And finally, could the Commission avail measures that TSC has put in place to ensure that Mr. Ruben Omondi Owino is paid all the accrued remunerations? This is from March 2018, when he was irregularly interdicted from the service. Questions by Honorable Sam Watandi, member for Alego Usonga, will be replied by the Chairperson Teacher Service Commission. Member for North Imenti, Honorable Rahim Dawood, will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury and Matters Planning to explain why Mr. Augustine Mugwika, a retired teacher and a resident of North Imenti constituency, has not been paid his pension dues for the months of January to May, the year 2020, and March 2021. Honorable Rahim Dawood will also be seeking to understand what measures is the ministry putting in place to ensure that Mr. Augustine Mugwika is paid his dues, and this is including interest, if any. His questions will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Matters Finance and National Planning. Member for Butere, Honorable Tindi Mwale, the House will be debating his bill this morning. And further bills to be deliberated by the House this morning is the Health Amendment Bill, a bill by Honorable Alice Wahome, Bill number 28 of 2020. The Institute of Social Workers Professional Bill, a bill by Honorable Joshua Kimilu, is a bill at the second stage. The Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2020, is also a bill that the House will be deliberating on this morning, and the bill is by Honorable Richard Tongi. Honorable Danson Mwakwona, who has sponsored the bill on the Alcoholics Control Bill, Bill number 35 of 2020, is also another bill that will be debated by the House this morning. A key in the highlights this morning is a bill by Nambale Member of Parliament, Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi, that seeks to establish the Debt Management Authority Bill, the Debt Management Authority. And the House will, for 2 hours this morning, be debating that particular bill. And in the event the House passes that particular bill, the National Treasury's Public Debt Management Authority will then be replaced should the MPs enact that particular law, establishing a semi-autonomous authority to manage public debt. The bill by Nambale Member of Parliament seeks to establish the authority to implement the government's borrowing policy and minimize matters' cost. The bill also provides that the authority will maintain a register of all loans advanced to the national as well as to the county governments. The Debt Management Authority, according to the proposals in the bill, is that it will be managed by a board comprising of a chairperson appointed by the President, Treasury Cabinet Secretary, the Attorney General, the Central Bank of Kenya, and the CEOs of the Capital Markets Authority, the National Security Exchange. Also, the Accountants Organization, ICPAK, the Kenya's Bankers Association, Kenya Private Association, as well as the Law Society of Kenya, will also nominate each person to sit at the board. According to further proposals in the bill, is that the authority will also assist county governments in managing their debt and will be run by a director general appointed by the board. The bill further seeks to regulate reckless borrowing by the state, and this is owing to the trillion of shillings in the public debt at the moment. The House will equally be debating a couple of bills from the Senate, and just to mention a few is the coffee bill by the chairperson Departmental Committee on Matters Agriculture
we still don't
and
have
Livestock.
the required numbers, so I proceed to add 5 minutes as per our standing orders. We are allowed to do that. So 5 minutes it is. See if we could raise the numbers.
The House is yet to get to at least 50 members to allow for it to transact business this morning. And the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Moses Cheboy, has further added 5 minutes, and this is pursuant to Standing Orders of the House, number 35. And the additional 5 minutes will allow more members to make their ways into the chamber and make their input in regards to the business of the House this morning. The Criminal Procedure Code Amendment Bill number 41 of 2020 by Honorable Nelson Koech is also another bill lined up for debate before the floor this morning. According to Standing Order number 34 on the Quorum, at the commencement of the House, subsection 2 is that if there's no quorum present when the chair is taken, a time will be appointed, which has already been appointed, 10 minutes, immediately after saying the prayer, and a further additional 5 minutes will be given upon the expiry of 10 minutes. And if upon the lapsing of the 5 minutes, there's still no quorum present, then the Speaker shall adjourn the House forthwith and to the next sitting. And so you are waiting to see whether the National Assembly will raise at least 50 members to allow it to transact business this morning, after which, if the House is unable to raise that particular number, which is the requirement pursuant to the guidelines and directives in adherence with matters COVID-19, then the Deputy Speaker will have no other plans other than adjourning the House until afternoon sitting, when the House is again set to sit during today's business. Members of Parliament continue making their way into the chamber to allow the House raise that particular key number to allow it to transact business this morning. The National Government Constituencies Development Fund, a bill by Honorable Tindi Mwale, Bill number 34 of the year 2021, is also another bill that members of Parliament will be debating this morning. The Sexual Offences Amendment Bill, Bill number 24 of 2020 by Honorable Gathoni wa Mushomba, is a bill that members of Parliament will be debating on this morning. The Chief Whip in the National Assembly, who happens to be member for Navaholo, Honorable Emmanuel
All right,
Wangwe.
honorable members, we can now start business.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The leader of majority, actually the deputy leader of majority. Proceed, you have the microphone.
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Speaker, I beg to read the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 23rd of February 23rd, 2022, the morning sitting. 1. The report of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021.
Order, Honorable Sankok. Honorable Sankok. Order, Honorable Sankok. Honorable Sankok.
Send him out.
Take your seat, Honorable Sankok. And, please, don't, I will not allow you to violate social distancing rules under any circumstances. So, Honorable Sankok, you might need to move a little further from your colleagues. Yes, that's better now. Proceed, Honorable.
Back here.
Yes, and any consultation, there is quite some consultation revolving around the member for Nandi Hills. Quite a lot of consultation. Now, do it in low tones. We do not have a problem with consultations, but they should be in reasonable decibels.
I repeat myself. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022, morning sitting. 1. Reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificate therein. Revenue statements of the State Law Office and Department of Justice. B. Revenue statements of the Business Registration Services. C. National Council for Law Reporting. D. State Law Office and the Department of Justice. E. Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Stub Mortgage and the Car Loan Scheme. And F. State Department for Broadcasting and Telecommunications. 2. Reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2020 and the certificates therein. 1. A. University of Eldoret. B. Ted and Kimathi University of Technology. C. Kenyatta Veterinary Vaccines Production Institution. D. Kenya Sese and Trisomoniasis Trypanosomiasis Eradication Council. E. Bathroom Processing Company of Kenya. F. Kenya Plant Health and Inspectorate Services. And G. Southeastern Kenya University. 3. Reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2019 and the certificate therein. A. Ruresa Water and Sewerage Company Limited. B. Iten Tambach Water and Sewerage Company Limited. C. Lake Basin Development Authority. D. Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. E. Uhuru Technical Training Institute for 18 month period ended 30th June 2019. 4. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2020 and the certificate therein. A. Yatta. B. Mwala. C. Kinangop. D. Mogosho. E. Baringo Central. F. Sotik. G. Orochororok. And the H. Bomen Central. 5. Report of the Auditor General and financial statements of Rongai constituency for the year ended 30th June 2019 and the certificate therein. 6. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements respective of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2018 and the certificate therein. A. Moibeni Technical and Vocational College. B. Hamed Shahame Mwadani Technical Training Institute. C. Mulaga Technical Training Institute. D. Orolaiza Water and Sewage Company Limited. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I put this there.
Very well. So we go to the next order. No, we have the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, we will sort out the issues of approval later. But is he in here?
Put off this mic. Put it off.
Well, I'm sure she would be absent. So we can let it for another, maybe tomorrow, actually tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon, not today, we might not get her. Oh, the Vice Chair, you wanted to say something on it?
Thank you.
But sorry, let's confirm first, just a minute. All right, proceed, if you can.
Thank you, Speaker.
Is that
These are member of Boni Erastus Kivasu Nzioka.
I see it's Honorable Kivasu as a member of the committee because you are not the Vice Chair.
Yes.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022, morning sitting. Report of the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation on its consideration of the Copyright Amendment Bill 2021, National Assembly Bill number 44 of 2021. Thank you, Speaker.
Right. We then go to the next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
All right. Under this particular order, there are two segments. One is the matters of questions, and the second one is statements. Now, on the first segment, the question by the member for Alego Usonga and that by the member for North Imenti, the Honorable Abdul Rahim Dawood, are both deferred on their own request, which I accept. So they are deferred. So we will go to the questions for the member for Jomvu, Honorable Twalib. Give him the mic. Honorable Twalib. Just be patient, Honorable Twalib. You are being, your mic issue is being sorted. Yeah, you have it now next to you. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 15 of 2022 to the Cabinet Secretary for Lands and Fiscal Planning. Question number 1, Mr. Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why Mr. Salim signed?
This will increase further the cost of production, meaning it will cost farmers a lot in terms of the cost of production, and it will affect food productivity. And I know one of the big four is food security. Mr. Speaker, I want to seek your directions and indulgence on that matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, that's fairly straightforward. Well, first of all, it is an extremely critical issue. I can see quite a number of members are putting their intervention slots here. But before I give the chair Departmental Committee on Agriculture, Honorable Tire, whom I see is in the House, I would rather give a few members to ventilate on it because it's a real topical matter. The only problem is I do not know how I'm going to share it out. But if members can speak briefly, we will be able to get many members speaking. So I will start with the Honorable Dr. Wamalwa. Then I pick 2 members from this other side. Then come another. I will give about 7 to 8 members. Yes, and please let's be brief.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to salute Honorable Keter for raising up this matter, and I'm happy the chair of the Committee on Agriculture is on board. Mr. Speaker, this is a critical moment where farmers are preparing their fields to plant, and fertilizer being one of the main inputs, Mr. Speaker, as we speak right now, the price per bag is costing about 7,000 Kenya shillings. Mr. Speaker, it's beyond the reach of the majority poor farmers. And the government, being the first line of defense, Mr. Speaker, is supposed to look into this matter. Mr. Speaker, had an opportunity to have looked at the BPS. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, there was no provision for the fertilizer because the BPS, Mr. Speaker, provides the key priority areas where the government is supposed to provide budgets. How I wish, Mr. Speaker, as you are in the House today, this is a matter that should be handled with urgency, Mr. Speaker, so that that provision of fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, in the BPS. Mr. Speaker, as the Jubilee government comes to its end, Mr. Speaker, it is indeed important as we prepare this budget. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is mainly going to be for the new government. It's only God who knows which one is going to be the new government. No, but on matters of fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, it cuts across. Fertilizer. Absolutely.
Yes.
And I'm talking about the BPS.
So that I give a few more members.
Exactly. So, Mr. Speaker, how I wish that we could move with speed, even if it's going to be in a supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker, that this fertilizer can be provided for the farmers as quick as possible. Because as we speak, Mr. Speaker, it has started raining. And when it starts raining, Mr. Speaker, very soon, it will be planting season. So I humbly request the relevant powers that be, Mr. Speaker, to move with speed to provide subsidized fertilizers to the farmers, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Member for Kipkelion West, then I'll pick quite some members. So Kipkelion West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I'm trying to look at those members, especially from the fertilizer consuming areas. I see the Honorable Kutuny, I see the Honorable Pukose, I see quite a number of members. If you are going to be brief, we are going to be giving quite a few members.
2 minutes.
Just a minute each. Honorable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honorable Keter for raising this urgent and important matter. Mr. Speaker, we live in a very dangerous time in this country where everything that is directed to our farmers is not the priority of this government. This government has money to refurbish stadiums. This government has money to do all the lofty, even including putting up a gun factory, but they don't have money for fertilizer subsidy to our farmers. Mr. Speaker, and we live at a time and under a president who has become so rogue, and is in every other time he appears on TV, he cheats the public. Mr. Speaker, you remember the president once said that the cost of energy will come down. Nothing has happened. He once said that farmers' input on dairy feeds will come down. Nothing happened, Mr. Speaker. And now, even as we address this issue of fertilizer, we have a report
what is your point of order,
Mr. Speaker, there is an addendum removing...
Order.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Actually, I'm surprised, Honorable Wangwe, because I wanted to give you to substantively contribute. So this point of order...
Honorable Speaker, my point of order should not subdue the substantive contribution. But my very good friend, we are debating the issue of fertilizer, but he's bringing in a debate on the president. Is he in order, Honorable Speaker, that Honorable Kosgei debates the president?
Restrict yourself to the fertilizer issue, the Honorable Member for Kipkelion. If there is anything you wanted to say, you say. So let's go to fertilizer.
Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, please finalize.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, thank you. We cannot address this issue in isolation, Mr. Speaker, but however, I want to say that there is already an addendum from the Budget Committee removing even what was allocated and requested by the committee for purposes of these fertilizer inputs. And we are saddened that nobody else can remove that, Mr. Speaker, if it is not the rogue state under the president.
Okay, that should be enough. Let's go to the Honorable Kutui. The majority whip, you had a shot on that bit. I'll give you some breathing time.
Yeah.
I'll get other members first, then come back to you.
Kongoi missing, Bwana Speaker.
Order.
Yeah.
Order, Honorable Kutui. Parliamentary language. Order.
Okay.
I could not understand the language you just spoke.
Asante. Asante Bwana Mwenyekiti. Mwenyekiti, nachukua hii fursa kumshukuru sana Mheshimiwa Keter kwa kuleta hoja hili ndani ya bunge. Hakuna taifa lolote ambalo linaweza kupiga hatua isipozingatia ukulima. Na Waswahili wanasema kila mwamba ngoma huvutia upande wake, lakini nataka kusema wazi kwamba sisi tunaovutia upande huu mwingine. Leo naamka na masikitiko kwa sababu bajeti ilikuwa imetengenezwa na ikawekwa pesa ya kutosha ya kupunguza gharama ya fertilizer ama mbolea. Lakini kwa mkia leo kwamba wizara tena imetuma taarifa nyingine ya kutoa hiyo pesa ambayo ilikuwa imerasibiwa. Mimi ninataka kumuomba mwenyekiti na kamati kwa ujumla waitupilie mbali ombi la serikali kuu ya kuondoa pesa ambayo ilikuwa imetengea kupunguza bei na gharama ya fertilizer ama mbolea. Wakulima wako tayari kwenda mashambani. Wengi wa Wakenya kwa sasa hawana chakula, lakini serikali inazembea, haijaweka mikakati ya kutosha. Kwa hivyo mimi ninataka kuomba serikali kuu, kabla hatujakata kauli ya kutoa msimamo wetu, waweze kutoa taarifa ya jinsi mikakati imewekwa ya kusaidia mkulima ili aweze kupata mbolea kwa bei nafuu. Asante.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the genesis of cartels who want to import maize, beginning with the production, Honorable Speaker. This is a sign that cartels have penetrated treasury. And Honorable Speaker, as the government, we should not support any proposal which is going to bring down our government just because cartels have penetrated treasury. Honorable Speaker, if production is not checked, it means we are going to import maize. And when we import maize, Honorable Speaker, it means at the end of the day, we are going to increase the cost of production and everything is not going to work for the country. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we want to advocate that we bring down, we make sure the amount that was allocated as for the import of fertilizer remains in the budget. We have to support it so that, Honorable Speaker, we don't want to see the cost of fertilizer remaining 7,000 to the farmers. Instead, it has to come down because, Honorable Speaker, that's the only way to support our people. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank Honorable Keter for the efforts of making sure that we have this statement before the Parliament. I also want to thank Honorable Wangwe for accepting that there are cartels in Treasury or in government, especially Treasury. You should actually move forward and name them. Mr. Speaker, we can't wait much longer. Rains are now with us. We require the prices of maize to come down, not today, but like yesterday. Mr. Fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, in most cases I've been on this floor advocating for the interests of CDF. Today I'm here for the farmers, Mr. Speaker, so that the fertilizers can actually come down. If this government can't listen to us, if this government cannot listen to farmers, the supplementary that will be here on Thursday or tomorrow afternoon, Mr. Speaker, I'll make sure I'll convince my colleagues that the old supplementary budget will go down. Mr. Speaker, it's not a threat. It's a statement I'm issuing before this floor, I'm a farmer too, and I actually want the prices to go down. Mr. Speaker, watch me tomorrow.
Your time is over.
I have many friends in this floor, Mr. Speaker. I have friends that are also farmers.
Member for Gilgil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the outcry cuts across the constituencies, cuts across the country. Yesterday I was in a place called Songoloi, and even if you're doing a meeting for bursaries, people are asking, we don't even need you to give us bursaries. We need to farm because we can, but we cannot afford fertilizer. And there is no cartel in this country, Mr. Speaker, that the government cannot demolish. So we hope that this can be done, and we agree and we support Honorable Keter in terms of the need to bring the cost of fertilizer down, and we hope that all these cartels that have been picked by the leadership of the House can be demolished, because the government is the government. So we hope that the addendum will be supported across the parties, regardless of what party one supports, because we cannot lower the food prices when the cost of fertilizer is still unaffordable.
Honorable Sankok, 1 minute. You know, I have to remind you because I know sometimes you speak for too long.
Choose today which side you will be, whether the side of Kenyans or the side of the rogue government that is trampling on Kenyans. Honorable Speaker.
You go to
Speaker,
the issue of fertilizer.
let me think.
Because if you bring other issues, it does not help.
Let me think.
If you genuinely want the issue of farmers, let's not dramatize. Let's deal with the matter of fertilizer. Let's not digress, please. Let's not politicize.
No fertilizer, no reduction of prices of fertilizers, no budget in this House. And I think members will choose where they will be, because Kenyans are watching. Whether you will support our farmers or then you will support the government by passing the budget that does not have money to subsidize the price of fertilizer, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and I thank Honorable Alfred Keter for bringing up this issue, because this issue is very emotive. It is rainy season. Kenyans are now planting. In Narok, we are the highest producers of barley, second highest producers of wheat, which consume the highest number of bags of fertilizer. And the last time we made a bumper harvest in Narok was when William Ruto was the Minister of Agriculture. And we actually exported our barley all the way to South Africa and Tanzania. That was the first and the last time, Honorable Speaker. Okay. So you can see the effect of lower prices of fertilizer on production, Honorable Speaker. We must reduce the price of fertilizer, increase production, and reduce the prices of food.
Okay, Honorable Nyikal, Dr. Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I also take this opportunity to actually appreciate and thank Honorable Keter. Mr. Speaker, there are times when matters of national importance are before us that we should strive to remove politics so that we come together. This is the issue of food for Kenyans. The price of fertilizers should go down. And that is something we support. Honorable Keter has asked for the correct thing. But I'll just tell my colleagues, the best in such circumstances is just leave out politics completely and talk about the issue. We all know that when it comes to politics, logic disappears. So if we then bring a lot of politics, even those who would support actually stop supporting because of politics. So the best approach whenever we have an issue of this nature is to cut politics out, think of Kenyans, and support the idea. I think that we should ensure that the prices of fertilizers come down. Thank you,
Honorable
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Mheshimiwa Alfred Keter for bringing this matter. Mr. Speaker, the critical thing here for us who come from other regions who do not depend on fertilizer is the fuel, prices of fuel. If you can reduce the price of fuel, all the other items or goods will go down, because production of food and services depends on the fuel. So I think we should also address the issue of fuel prices.
Honorable Pukose.
Nashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii ili kuchangia kwa ile swali ambalo lilihusisha Mheshimiwa Keter, ambapo anataka chairman wa agriculture Mheshimiwa Tiren aweze kuleta jibu kwa hii nyumba kuhusu kwa nini bei ya fertilizer imebaki juu. na nimefurahi mheshimiwa wangu amesema katika serikali hii kuna cartels, na mimi nafikiri wangu tu ameonyesha kidole mahali sio sawa. Cartels iko kule State House, na kule ndio tunataka tujue rais lazima ashughulikie kwa ile kipindi imebaki, ahakikishia kwamba bei ya fertilizer imeteremka chini ili
order. We have said we restrict ourselves to the matter. Let's not throw unnecessary. Please. So if you do that, Honorable Sankok.
Asante
Honorable Sankok. Honorable Sankok. Honorable Sankok. In fact, it is lucky that I had given you an opportunity. Had you spoken like that, I'd make sure that you don't get one. Because we have to restrict ourselves to the matter that has been raised. Anything that is a sideshow is unnecessary. So please, order Honorable Sankok. Order Honorable Sankok.
So Bwana Speaker, nimeona mheshimiwa Kutunya amesema sijui nafuta upande gani, na ni mzuri tufute upande ya mkulima, upande ya Mkenya wa kawaida, tuhakikishe kwamba wana chakula ya kutosha. Bwana Speaker, niliona sehemu zingine za Kenya iko na ukame mkali, na tulikuwa tunaona hata watu hawana chakula. Yet sisi kama kaunti ya Trans Nzoia baada hata tuko na mahindi katika kwenye stores. So tungependa serikali iangalie kwamba mkulima anapata afueni kwa mambo ya fertilizer. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Honorable Ashiali and the Honorable Chair, Departmental Committee, I'll give two from this side. But let's have Honorable Ashiali, then I give two here, and then we come back to the Chair.
Thank you, Honorable
Because
Speaker.
It's something that we must wind down.
Honorable Speaker, those of us who live near the Ugandan border, we are really embarrassed that foodstuffs are cheaper in our neighboring country, in Uganda, and yet foodstuffs in Kenya are very expensive. Honorable Speaker, the reason why when you go home to campaign and you find so many young fellas who are actually supposed to be in farms doing something to produce food is because today it's uneconomical to do agriculture, because the prices of fuel that will run tractors is expensive, the cost of fertilizer is expensive, and therefore the young men who should be doing agriculture have decided to now hang around so that they can get 1 or 2 shillings from politicians. Honorable Speaker, I am embarrassed that I put this government in place. I contributed to the formation of this government, and I am embarrassed. I am highly embarrassed, and how I wish that the 5 months remaining end as soon as possible.
The Honorable Sotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think I must thank Honorable Keter for bringing up this matter, because, Mr. Speaker, as Honorable Nikala said, the issue of increased fertilizer prices does not know which political formation you support or which side of the political divide you are. It is affecting all of us. It is affecting the people we represent here. So if you try and politicize such an important issue and try to gain political mileage out of it, I think that's very unfortunate. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I brought a question to this House about 6 months ago on the issue of fertilizer and on the issue of procurement malpractices of
Okay, so order. Honorable Kavai Adagala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to congratulate Honorable Ketel. This is timely, and this is the time farmers are preparing to plant the maize and other foodstuffs. I think this is quite in order, Mr. Speaker, sir. The farmers down there are hurt. Some are still having maize in the stores, and others are preparing land ready for planting season. The rains are here with us. I was in the village the other day and it is raining heavily down there. So I support this. Prices of fertilizer should be reduced to enable farmers prepare their land quite on good time and plant. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support this. Prices of fertilizer should come down, and even the seedlings for farmers to plant.
Okay. So the chair, agriculture, there are things I would like, that would be only proper for you to do. No more. We have order, members. Let's first hear from the chair, agriculture, what he has to say about when he's able to respond to the original statement by the member for Molo. Because what Honorable Keter has done is reignite a statement that had been requested before. What is the status? And then you can proceed and make your statement.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And first and foremost, I would like to thank Honorable Keter, my brother, Honorable Keter, MP Nandi Hills, for the question that he has raised today. And I think also I would want to mention that it had been raised by Honorable Kuria for MP Molo, and we had requested the Ministry of Agriculture to be able to give us feedback on the same question. But up to date, we've not received anything from the Ministry of Agriculture, but we have summoned him to come to the committee next week on Tuesday. So I hope he will come, because we've also had a lot of challenges, because whenever we invite him to come to the committee, he normally does not appear, and he has been quite busy. So I would also want the House to help us also make sure that he is there, so that he can be able to answer some of these questions. But I will also want to mention one or two things on the same matter, because it's a very important matter, and I think, as a honorable member had said, Ototsi, this touches so many Kenyans, because we have a number of MPs here who represent people who use fertilizer, and also we need the fertilizer for purposes of maize, and maize is a staple food in this country, which I believe when you don't have enough maize or we don't get enough food in this country, it's going to be very expensive for the government or for our people, because of tax that we'll have to import, or rather we'll use to import. So I also want to take this opportunity to also put it clear that if fertilizer was 2,500 shillings last year and the price of maize now is 3,500, you can imagine how much Kenyans are going to buy maize next year if the price of fertilizer remains at 6,000 or almost 7,000 shillings, which I think the government is not treating issues of agriculture to the importance that it is supposed to be treated. And I'll start by bringing up the issue that if you look at the budget, in agriculture we are only getting about 3.1% of the budget goes into agriculture, without them considering that agriculture is the backbone of this economy, of the economy of this country, and Kenya being a signatory of Maputo Declaration, where there's supposed to be a minimum of 10% that's supposed to go to agriculture. So I think that should actually go towards, so that we are able to support the farmers. I want to talk of the addendum that has been brought to our attention, and
What's your point of order, Honorable Elisha?
Mr. Speaker, I think the chairman of agriculture is going round and round and round. He should be more pragmatic and tell the country that the prices of fertilizer went up when the deputy president was the minister of agriculture, and he himself imported fertilizers to this country. He must be more serious. He cannot be going around without explaining the historical position, why the price of fertilizer has been...
Honorable Elisha. Now, I think this is exactly the same thing we were saying, that the unfortunate bit is when you politicize an extremely important issue for the farmers and for the citizens. Now, I do not know really whether the chair...
I have not finished. Thank you.
Have been interested in
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. But like I said earlier, Honorable Speaker, let us treat this thing of fertilizer.
What is your point of order, Honorable? Indeed, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I was just trying to catch your eye, because I've seen majority of the people who have contributed are largely the large-scale farmers. But I represent here majority of small-scale farmers, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say...
How does that become a point of order? Because you see, any point of order is when something is out of order. So are you suggesting that by not being given an opportunity, it's out of order? I don't think so.
Mr. Speaker, I thought it's an opportunity for me to contribute.
But then do it in half a minute.
Okay.
So that I go back to, because I would have actually ruled you out of order.
Okay.
But just half a minute.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, in our language we say that wealth is what remains after you are fed. In trying to paraphrase the Kikuyu saying, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, food comes from agriculture and from our farms. And the prices currently of fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, from where I come from and across the entire country of Kenya, is unaffordable to many, especially small-scale farmers. And Mr. Speaker, this percolates even further. The current scenario of our country is that we import more than 200 billion worth of food, Mr. Speaker.
Your half a minute is gone. Thank you. So no more point of orders. I realize it's actually point of arguments and point of contributions. So let's leave it. Honorable members.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, let us allow the chair. Let us allow the chair.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me proceed from there. Thank you very much. Like I was actually.
Let's hear what the chair has to say first.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also wanted to add to it that we had requested and we had talked to the ministry, and the information we had is that we had requested for about 15 billion to be able to sort out the issue of subsidized fertilizer in this country, especially this time when fertilizer prices are very high. And the cabinet has not given a feedback, which we should expect that they should move very fast. But what the committee did, and I want to applaud the members, my members in the Committee of Agriculture, is that we were able to do the supplementary and make some adjustments where we put in 1.4 billion to be able to subsidize fertilizer, so that as we await cabinet's decision.
Out of order.
So what we want is that
Honorable Pukose.
So we want.
I'm not going to allow you.
Please protect me, Honorable Speaker, so that I can be able to proceed.
Order, Honorable Chair. Honorable Pukose. Order, Honorable Pukose. I can confirm to you that I'm not going to allow you. So don't waste your time, because you cannot be unruly in the House and expect me to listen to you. So I'm not going to listen to you. Proceed, Honorable Chair. I'm not out of order. Proceed. Proceed, Chair. Have you finished?
Thank you. Please. I'm normally very patient when people are talking. Please, I would request the House, please. Now, like I said, like I've just said, that we in the committee we were able to put 1.4 billion to be able to subsidize fertilizer for farmers as we await for cabinet we await for cabinet to make decisions, because we had requested for 15 billion. So what I was saying in short is that there is a deadline.
Honorable Gikaria. Just a
Thank
minute,
you. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what I wanted to do, and I think that is what exactly
what is out of order?
The Chair of Agriculture said. Honorable Speaker, this is not the time of asking questions. This is the time of the committee putting money either in the supplementary and in the budget itself, so that we can be able to address some of these issues. And I am happy that the Chair of Agriculture has said that in the supplementary they have put 1.4 billion, which this House should be here in our numbers to try and support what the Chair and his committee has done.
So that is,
and that is the only way we can be able to, Honorable Speaker,
that is what
to
I'm
address
saying.
some of these
Honorable
issues.
members,
thank you.
You are rising here saying that there is something which is out of order, but actually what you are doing is basically contributing. Order, Honorable Pukose. I have just told you that I'm not going to give you. So don't bother. You know, there is something that you cannot do, Honorable Pukose. You cannot bully the Speaker. You have no capacity. So this is an issue. You have had your time to contribute. Allow other members and the Chair to respond. And don't, Honorable Pukose, of course, I'm not going to remove you from the House, but I might ask you to relocate so that you do not interfere with my concentration. Do you want me to try it, Honorable Pukose? Do you want me? Did I hear you saying that I cannot? You know, I can try it with you because it has never been done in the House. I'm going to ask you to go and sit very far from the speaker, and I don't think you are going to have any power to reject. But so please, Honorable Kose, you have had your opportunity, you have spoken. Let us allow the chair, and the chair was bringing out, this is an issue that we need to resolve. Now, if we start politicizing or heckling each other, it does not help. So the chair, please, can you tell us this? When is it that you are going to respond to the statement? That's a very critical thing. You have brought many issues, yes, including the budget matters, which is fine. But eventually, please say when you are able to respond, because you have said the CS is going to be before you on Tuesday. Yes. Are you able, therefore, to table the report, or I mean, to respond to that statement on Thursday next week? Yes. That is very good. No, so we have achieved something.
Yes. So I just wanted to add that about the what the committee did about the supplementary is that we were able to put in 1.4 billion in term for the fertilizer subsidy as we await for cabinet. So what I'm putting it clearly is that we have received an addendum from Treasury, and I think we are going to reject it so that we are able to support farmers. And I'll request members, especially members who represent people who are farmers, please be with us so that we make sure that we pass what is going to support our farmers. Okay. Thank you very much, and may God bless.
All right, I think that is a matter that is resolved. So please, we can, and I took quite some time, honorable members. I gave quite a number of you an opportunity to speak because I realize this is, of course, something which is very critical to the economy of the country. So let's go to the next order.
Order number 8. The Public Debt Management Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2020, resumption of debate.
Honorable members, as is usual, whenever we get to resumption of a debate, we always look out for members who had contributed and had balance of minutes. This particular, the Honorable Fabian Muli was on the floor. He had a balance of 8 minutes. Should he be willing to proceed with it, I would be happy to give him the opportunity. Is he in the House? Doesn't seem so. So then we go to the members who have not contributed and would wish to contribute. Honorable Makali Mulu. Yes, Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Which chairman now?
Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by appreciating Honorable Sako Bunyasi for this important bill, the bill on Public Debt Management Authority. Mr. Speaker, you must have realized that all of this week, there has been a serious national conversation on issues relating to public debt. And this shows how important public debt is important to Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, just as an introductory remark, we must realize that the reason why we have public debt in any country
Order member for Red Base
is because, Honorable Speaker,
you cannot, please, can you please
people are
quietly take your leave?
Spending.
Proceed. You are all interfering with the free flow of, please, members, let's give each other opportunity.
I thought, Mr. Speaker, you had given people enough time to score their burger points. Why are they harassing serious business like this?
Proceed, Honorable Dr. Mulu.
So, Honorable Speaker, I was saying the reason why countries have to report on public debt is because every year as we plan for our expenditure, as we plan for our programs and projects, Honorable Speaker, you find countries, Honorable Speaker, would always spend more than they are collecting from their own resources through taxation. And Honorable Speaker, over time, so long as you spend more than you collect, and if you come to a personal level, so long as you spend more than your income, obvious that a deficit must be met through borrowing. And that's why you see over time, this country has accumulated public debt to the tune of about 8.2 trillion, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, the reason why this bill becomes very important is because we're almost at a level where we are eating over 70% of our GDP being the GDP public debt ratio. What that means, Honorable Speaker, is that there is need then to think about how do you continue managing public debt. And I think that's what this bill addresses. This bill, Honorable Speaker, was published in around 2020. It has taken a lot of time before it lands to this House for debate. So one must now appreciate the fact that now we have the opportunity to debate this bill, Honorable Speaker. This bill, Honorable Speaker, comes up with what we call an institutional framework on how to manage public debt. And why it is very important, Honorable Speaker, because one of the questions we have been asking ourselves over time is how much is our public debt as a country? You have seen this week, Honorable Speaker, where some are saying it's 11 trillion, others are saying it is 8.2 trillion, others are saying when you add public pending bills, it's about 9.something trillion. And why is this happening? It is happening because we don't have a one-stop kind of shop where you can get these figures and get these figures which, with authority, that the person who will be issuing these figures is somebody who has all the data we require and can actually justify the figures. And that's why I'm saying this bill becomes very important. In terms of measuring public debt, Honorable Speaker, you realize that the conventional way of reporting on public debt is you leave out things to do with the guaranteed debt, and you leave out issues to do with the pending bills. Honorable Speaker, the reason why you leave this out is because guaranteed debt is debt which is owed by parastatals and other institutions which are government institutions, but not directly through the Treasury. And what that means is the government comes in through Treasury just to guarantee and say that in case this money is not repaid, then, Honorable Speaker, the government can come on board and make that payment. The question is, Honorable Speaker, you know, Honorable Speaker, it means we'll have taken that responsibility to pay. So, Honorable Speaker, when it comes to measuring public debt, that's why we see we leave out assuming the concerned bodies will be able to pay on their own. We also don't include pending bills when we are reporting on public debt in a conventional way, Honorable Speaker, because of the same reason. But the truth of the matter is these are obligations which, in case anything goes wrong, the government will have to pay. So, Mr. Speaker, if we had such an authority in place, you'll be able to say how much is public debt as reported in our books, how much is guaranteed debt as reported through those other organizations, and how much is pending bills, so that at the end of the day, we have a totality of how much the government should be paying. And to me, I see this authority being very important, Honorable Speaker, because they will be able to tell Kenyans at any point in time, this is much we are owed as Kenyans. This is much we are paying in terms of principal. This is much we are paying in terms of interest. This is much we are expected to pay over time. And even be able to tell Kenyans, this is the repayment period for this loan. And say, even when you finish paying, then this will be the totality in terms of how much was paid in principal and how much was paid in interest. Mr. Speaker, you know, we had a very interesting debate in this House when we are raising the ceiling to 9 trillion. And the debate, Mr. Speaker, was allow us a room of 9 trillion so that within that room, Honorable Speaker, we can reorganize we can actually restructure our loans so that we have more of concessional loans as opposed to commercial loans. And with that understanding, Honorable Speaker, we went ahead and allowed Treasury to have the 9 trillion ceiling. Whether we achieved that objective of reorganizing our loans in terms of commercial and concessional is a question for another day, not today. The other matter which is critical, Honorable Speaker, and which I think this authority will have to address, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of how the debt is applied. You know, Honorable Speaker, every day we are talking about public debt. But has any Kenyan taken time to map the programs and projects in this country where this debt is being applied, Honorable Speaker? And the issue is, could we be experiencing skewness in terms of application of this debt? Because when it comes to repayment of the debt, Honorable Speaker, every Kenya is a key player in the paying of those debts.
Honorable Koech,
In terms of they will be taxed. So even as you complain about this issue, Honorable Speaker, it will be important that this authority now, what I'm having in mind, once we approve this bill, Honorable Speaker, we'll have an authority which, Honorable Speaker, can say, for the money we have borrowed over the last 5 years, these are the projects, and this is where they are located in Kenya. On those basis, Honorable Speaker, we can discuss effectively issues of equity. Whether every area of Kenya is benefiting from these loans, because we will all pay the loans. The other important issue, Honorable Speaker, which this authority, I hope will be able to address, is the issue of whether we are getting value for money. Honorable Speaker, the law demands, if you look at the Public Finance Management Act, Honorable Speaker, it says, whatever money you borrow in this country, it must first of all get to the consolidated fund in Kenya, and from there you disperse. Of late, Honorable Speaker, we have heard of loans where we sign the papers, and what we see is either loan in materials coming into Kenya, things are done outside there. What that means, Honorable Speaker, is as a country, we don't have a total control over this loan. With this bill passing, Honorable Speaker, we'll have an authority which ensures that all the money borrowed, first of all, gets to our consolidated fund for purposes of audit at the right time. And then you can disperse the loan from that fund. At the end of the day, Kenyans will be getting value for money. Last but not least, because of time, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of evaluation of the programs we are going to fund. We'll have an authority which, from a technical perspective, can conduct proper appraisal of projects, can conduct feasibility studies of those projects, and see whether these projects will be able to repay themselves over time. Because, Honorable Speaker, the issue of intergenerational equity, when we are borrowing, is very important. We should make sure that if we borrow for 20 years, by the time we reach the 20th year, Kenyans have started benefiting from such a programs which have been implemented, and in that case, then the future generations will not be overburdened repaying loans which were not able to generate any income for the country. So we'll be growing our national cake, and the income coming from that growth, then we'll reduce loan payment, and at the end of the day, we'll have sustainable loans, which to some extent are self-servicing. And
very well. So, in the order, again, I don't know why Ole Sankok is always top on the list, but would you mind being brief this morning?
I cannot be brief, Honorable Speaker, because there is time allocated to everybody. But I'll finish before that time elapses, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, don't get worried when I'm always on top of the list, because I
have no reason to get worried at all.
I come before you, Honorable Speaker.
So I want you to contribute now. You are actually spending a minute of your own
and
time.
I leave after you, Honorable Speaker, so that I earn from my sweat, as directed by the Bible.
I think I might actually, so that you can know.
Honorable Speaker,
I might actually have to give someone else for the time being as you reorganize yourself.
No.
So proceed then.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The Public Debt Management Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 36 of 2020, is very important and is in this House in the right time, Honorable Speaker. And I hope all members in this House, irrespective of the political inclination that they may have, will support this bill, because this debt burden in this country is burdening Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. You can't imagine that a child who will be born today or a debt of 136,000, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, is unfortunate that we will have to pay all this debt, all of us, irrespective whether the money borrowed was used properly or was used wrongly, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, is unfortunate because those who are in the management in government, Honorable Speaker, who are supposed to implement projects that will give us value for our money, Honorable Speaker, are busy implementing projects that will not give us returns on investment, Honorable Speaker, yet we will pay these loans, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and I'm sure this authority will look into priorities, Honorable Speaker, because for me, I believe where we went wrong and why we are not able to service our debt, Honorable Speaker, is because we decided to invest on investments that use capital, Honorable Speaker, what we call capital-intensive investments, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when you invest in capital-intensive investment, it is because you have the luxury of time, you have the luxury of resources. We have resources that you can wait, Honorable Speaker, for them to give you returns on investment because you are not in a hurry, because you are not poor, Honorable Speaker. But this country is a poor country, is a developing country. It needs to invest on labor-intensive infrastructure and investment, Honorable Speaker, so that we get returns on our investment as quick as possible, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if you are rich, you let your money do the work for you. If you are poor, you let your muscles do the work for you. In this case, in our country set up, Honorable Speaker, we will allow the unemployed youth, millions of them, to work for us because at the moment, we are not a developed country. We are still struggling as a country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, a case in point is where we have invested on the expressway, Honorable Speaker, spending 80 billion on an expressway. And this expressway will assist 1% of Kenyan citizens who are traveling to JKIA, Honorable Speaker. If we will have taken the 80 billion to invest on labor-intensive investment like affordable housing, Honorable Speaker, we will be able to have constructed 80,000 units of 2-bedroom each in strategic locations of our cities, Honorable Speaker, because the government have land in prime areas, Honorable Speaker. And at the end of the day, we will be able to employ more people because each unit will require a carpenter, a plumber, a mason, 5 young men, Honorable Speaker. 5 times 80,000 will have employed 400,000 young men to do the work for us, Honorable Speaker. But the expressway, which we have invested 80 billion, is using machineries. It is capital intensive. It have only been able to employ 3,000 people, Honorable Speaker. If we have invested in that labor-intensive investment of affordable housing, Honorable Speaker, which is one of the big 4 agenda of our president, then we will have, the government will be charging rent, meaning it will have another source of income rather than increasing taxes on food, increasing taxes on fuel, and increasing taxes, Honorable Speaker, on fertilizer, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, so as a country, and this authority will have to look into our economic models. Which one will work? Is it the trickle-down economic model or the bottom-up economic model? Because that is the only way we can be able to manage our debt, Honorable Speaker, and be able to service our debt. If you invest on labor-intensive investment, which is in the bottom-up economic model, then you'll be able to even broaden the tax base. You'll be able to bring so many people on board who are willing to pay taxes, Honorable Speaker, because they have the economic source of income, Honorable Speaker. The moment you have 1 million extra taxpayers, it means you have more revenue, which means you can be able to service your loan. But in the trickle-down economic model, where we invest in a few big corporates like KQ, Honorable Speaker, thinking that they will pay taxes, and they end up being folder grounds for corruption and end up declaring nil in returns, meaning they will not even pay taxes, Honorable Speaker. We will not be able to repay our loans, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, this bill is here in this House at the right time, and we all support because, Honorable Speaker, our debt, the burden is too huge for Kenyans. Kenyans are now crying, #reduce food prices. Why are they crying? Because of the burden of the debt that we have, Honorable Speaker, that we have to service to an extent that we don't have money left to subsidize fertilizers to be able to cushion the poor and vulnerable in our country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, therefore, we support this bill, and we will like the authority, the Public Debt Management Authority, to be able to advise the government on what type of investment it will carry, not only to advise them on the limit of borrowing, but also advise on types of investment, model of economic model, so that we can be able to have more people paying taxes and more money will be available for repaying taxes. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Honorable Mboni Mwalika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. for giving me this opportunity to say a few words on this bill. Speaker, public debt is not a bad thing. So long as the debt is being utilized in productive sectors of the economy, which have high economic impact, and a country can be able to pay. No country can be able to achieve meaningful development without borrowing. According to World Bank report on status of the world debts in 2021, the country with the highest debt is Japan, with the 257% debt as a ratio of GDP. In Africa, Sudan reads with the 210% of GDP, which is the highest in Africa. Kenya, we are at 70. And yet, we are really complaining. But the whole thing is how the debt is being used. And can the country be able to pay the debts? Debt is a function of expenditure and revenue. When a country cannot be able to collect more expenditures, and it has huge expenditure, then we have debt. Currently, this country is servicing debt at almost 900 billion, which is a huge chunk of money which you are collecting, because you are collecting around 1.6 and you are paying around 9 billion, leaving us with only 700 billion, which 600 billion is used in paying salaries and other recurrent expenditures. Honorable Speaker, this House cannot run away from the debt issues in the country, because budgets are compiled by the executives, Parliament approves the debt, approves the budgets, which normally have deficit. So this country, this House cannot say that it cannot be blamed on the issues of debt. The bill proposes to take away the mandate of central bank as government fiscal agents and face it on the authority, which is a normality. And we have to be very careful when we are looking at the bill, because Central Bank of Kenya is one of the highly respected institutions in Africa. So when you are looking at this bill, and I want to say that I will support it with amendments, we need to look at the functions of this, this authority, and also ask ourselves, this authority, because this Public Debt Management Department in Treasury, is this authority going to do something different than that department in Treasury? Because so long as our expenditure exceeds our revenue, there is no way we are going to be able to fight debt. One thing I like about this bill is the proposal for the authority to compile and keep public debt register with the details on the terms of the loans, principal amount, interest, repayment terms, and collateral. I'll tell you, up to 2002, because, Honorable Speaker, I'll tell you, I did my paper on, master's paper, on debt management and its impact to economic growth. By then, I'll tell you, we did not have a register. We did not even know how much we had in terms of loan. So this authority, if it's going to be able to do that, we'll be able really to know how much we own, how much we are paying, what is the collateral, and also the purpose of the loan, including list of projects and programs. And earlier speaker said that, this is very important, and also to know where these projects are being implemented. Because we've been paying loans whereby the projects are skewed, are being implemented in certain areas. And when it comes to payment of loans, everybody is paying. So it's good to have the list of the project where they are being implemented, so that at least we can know everybody is benefiting. And this will ensure transparency and openness in debt management. Speaker, for this authority to succeed, several things need to be done. One, the authority should be given independence, should get enough funding and support it needs so that it can be able to perform its functions. Two, the government should put in place measures to reduce fiscal deficits. Because the authority itself, without the support of the government to reduce fiscal deficit, it will not be able to do it. The government should be able to pursue fiscal consolidation and reduce wastage in government. When you look at our budgets, you see items, votes on hospitality. These are teas and those kind of things, newspaper, and they take a huge amount of money in the budget. So the government should be able to reduce some of these things, which are not really necessary for officers to perform. Three, the government should sell non-performing parastatals and government agencies. We have an example, the KQ. We have already put 22 billion. KQ requires 100 billion for it to come to its feet. And not just KQ. There are so many other parastatals which are actually lying on its checker. And some of them, I don't know if you are aware of this, a parastatal called National Trading Corporation. It's still there in the books, it's getting money, but that it used to distribute foodstuffs. But as a country, do we need a parastatal to distribute foodstuffs? So some of those parastatals should be sold so that they can leave the exchequer and implement the money to other important things. The government should be able to live within its means. We have so many projects which are very good, but we are paying through the nose, and that's why the debt is ballooning. The country should also be able to enhance revenue correction measures and expand base. Three sectors: finance and banking, ICT, and transport, which contribute 13% of GDP. They contribute 52% of tax revenue. What about other sectors? The other sectors, which contribute 87% of GDP. So the country should be able to expand tax base and collect revenue from other sectors. Lastly, the country should go for concessional loans and retire commercial loans, which are very expensive, and that's actually what is hitting us. Speaker, with those few remarks, I support. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Member for Kitui Rural, you said up to which year we did not know how much we were borrowing and how much we had borrowed?
Chair, sorry, up to around 2002, before debt management department in Treasury.
So you were just borrowing without knowing how much we had borrowed?
I'm telling you, I mean, you go to Treasury, you get different figures. You go to
Very well, very well. I think this is a very important bill, and I think the Finance and Budget Committee, the first start actually for your consideration should be what is in our debt books before we start budgeting. We shall have contribution from the Honorable Ngunjiri Kimani, member for Bahati.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would like to maybe to remind the members, there's a time in this House we are asked to pass the ceiling to 9 trillion, if they can remember very well. And we did it. And we were persuaded because that the money the government was borrowing, it was really very high, and they wanted to borrow from outside with the 2% so that they can pay the local banks. That was the agreement, and that's how we were persuaded to do. And we did that. But even after doing that, we can see that the money, when we passed to be 9 trillion, that money is not yet known exactly what happened, because we will not be having this pressure. Because you remember, there was a time when retired Kibaki was there, the banks were looking for public to persuade them that they can be able to borrow money with a small interest, and also persuading them to open their account without actually putting any money in the account. So it was a very important, and that's why I'm saying today, I'm supporting the bill. Because these things now we are hearing, I agree with some of the members, we don't know whether we are 9 trillion or we don't know whether we are in 11. It needs to be cleared by the parliament to know exactly where we are, because if there's some money which has been borrowed without passing the parliament, I think that's why the members have been worried. They don't know exactly where are we and how much are we supposed to support, because we know the economy is not good. And actually, it's for the members of the parliament to know if we are borrowing from the treasury, they want to borrow the money. It's for the members to know, so they can be able to discuss and pass and know how they are supposed to have enough to borrow. Because when we go outside, the public are asking this, and it has too much pressure on the ground. So it's important. I'm agreeing with the members, the way they are saying about this bill, and I'm supporting this bill, Mr. Speaker, so that we can be able to know exactly what are we supposed to do, and also the public should also know clearly what are we discussing. For now, it's been seen like members, we are not actually sure, and we present people. It's like we are not sure what have we borrowed, what did we pass, what is it borrowed up to now. The public looks like they are confusion. So I think it's very important for the members, and I support the bill, so that we can be clear, and anything should be passed of this country about borrowing, it should pass the parliament, so that the parliament can be able to carry the cross if anything can go wrong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of Minority.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I contribute to this bill, which is intending to create an authority to manage our public debts, I want to start by saying that if we respected our constitution, if we respected the laws of this country, if we respected ourselves, and I say this because we haven't respected ourselves so much as a nation. We borrow money and spend it in a way that even an individual who borrows money from a bank to finance his own personal development would not spend money in the manner in which we have been spending our borrowed funds in this country. If we did all that, Mr. Speaker, there would be no need to create an authority, another authority or an agency to address the issues of public debt or look at our debts and evaluate them, because we have enough institutions, Mr. Speaker, in this country. We have a functioning treasury that has the responsibility and task to manage our economy. We have Central Bank of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, which looks at the liquidity, looks at other matters like fiscal issues of the nation. We also have a parliament that approves the budget and approves the debt ceiling and approves the debt levels each year. So, Mr. Speaker, we have enough institutions. We have the Auditor General. We have the Controller of Budget. We are just creating another institution on top of other institutions which have the responsibility of making sure that our economy is properly managed. But, Mr. Speaker, from experience, we have failed ourselves as a nation. And I hear people say that Parliament does not even know how much we owe. That is a lie, Mr. Speaker. That is not correct. We have the figures and statistics from Central Bank of Kenya. If we are doubting the Central Bank of Kenya's statistics and figures, then let us say we have a Central Bank of Kenya that is not competent, and we see what to do with it. But we cannot misrepresent and misreport facts on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, as if they are golden truth. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, as at 1st of December, 2021, the report from the Central Bank indicates that this country owes 8.2 trillion shillings. That is the figure that we have. And there is a projection, Mr. Speaker, that by June 30th of this year, we will be indebted to the level of 8.8 trillion. I think what has been causing confusion is this additional part of the definition of debt to include guaranteed debts. Mr. Speaker, guaranteed debts can be treated differently by economists and finance experts or accountants like myself. Economists feel that guaranteed debts should form part of our public debt as we plan to borrow more funds or plan to finance our budget. As finance or accounting gurus, we don't treat them as such because these are contingent liabilities. And contingent liabilities only become liabilities when they become liabilities, Mr. Speaker. But it remains a contingent liability. So long as you can disclose it in our books, that besides our debt level of 8.2 trillion, we also have guaranteed debts to our parastatals to the tune of so much. I doubt the 3.5 trillion because that figure, I haven't got it from authentic or authoritative quarters. But Mr. Speaker, I also want to be on record that how has we built our borrowed funds to 8.2 trillion as at 21st of December 2021. By the time President Kibaki was leaving office, together with Raila Odinga as his Prime Minister, and John Mbadi as Assistant Minister in the office of the Prime Minister, by the time we were leaving executive, we left this country at a level of indebtedness of 1.894 trillion shillings. That is a fact, and they are in the books. By June 2018, 30th June 2018, and I'm very specific because I had some politicians like myself trying to rewrite history. You cannot rewrite history. History is there. It will remain in our records that we had borrowed up to 5.02 trillion shillings, not 4.5. Those are figures from Central Bank. These are not figures from any other quarter, campaign secretariat. These are figures from Central Bank of Kenya. It can be 4.5 from a campaign secretariat of whichever grouping, whether it is Kenya Kwisha or Kenya Kwanza, whatever you call it. But I'm giving you figures that we have and which I can vouch for. Figures that are there in the Central Bank of Kenya. Now, Mr. Speaker, again, something I want to clarify is that there is nothing wrong with two things. One, there is nothing wrong with the debt ceiling. Debt ceiling is a provision, is an indicator that we should borrow up to this much. You can even put it at 20 trillion. There's nothing wrong with that. Who says if you put it at 20 trillion, you have to borrow up to 20 trillion? This parliament every financial year approves debts for the country. That is where we should focus on. We should be asking ourselves every financial year, why are we approving 800 billion, for example? To do what? To go to which projects? That is what we should ask. But Mr. Speaker, remember this, the MP standing here, John Mbadi, from 2015, and I'm on record, you can go to Hansard. If there is one member of parliament who has consistently warned this country that we are mismanaging our debts, it is myself. And I'm repeating it. Where did the rain start beating us? The rain started beating us when we started so many projects, Mr. Speaker. And you know this we did, and I can see my friend, the former majority leader, Honorable Duale, has just walked in. Mr. Speaker, Jubilee 1
wanted to be re-elected into office. They wanted to get public support in 2017. Therefore, they started so many projects across the country to show people that they are working. They started so many roads. They started geothermal projects. They started to give power. Remember them saying even nyumba ya nyazi uta switch on electricity. Steamer. At a steamer kila mahali. Mr. Speaker, you listen to those speeches. There were so many projects. SGR was started at inflated cost. We started projects that could not be sustained. We didn't have resources to implement them. So what did we do? We went in the borrowing spree. And when we were borrowing, we committed another crime. Borrowing expensive loans, commercial loans. A country borrowing at 7% interest rate, 9% like an individual going to the bank to borrow. It's unheard of. We should have borrowed at concessional rates, 2%. They're available. But because we didn't want to be transparent, we went to borrow money. Remember, we were holding what we were calling the bus shows across the world to advertise that we are ready to take loans. So people came and gave us Eurobond, the syndicated loans. All these commercial loans is what has put this country to where it is, near financial distress that we are discussing today. Mr. Speaker, then what again happened is that when we got the money, did we know how to apply the money? Remember, Mr. Speaker, and we were on this. We investigated the Eurobond money. Do you know what we were told? A huge chunk of that money was given to NYS. To do what? To clean streets in Kibra, to portray the former MP for Langata, Raila Odinga, as having not done much for Kibera and left Kibera dirty. Now the new Jubilee regime was cleaning Kibera to demonstrate, to show that they are working. They were cleaning Madare. They went to Kisumu Kondele to clean. Well, we need clean streets. But who goes to the bank to borrow money to clean its compound? Tell me, even one individual here who would go to DTB, Kenya Commercial Bank or Cooperative Bank to borrow money to give people to slash and cut grass in their homes. You cannot do that. You must apply borrowed money to productive sector of the economy. We did not. So two things we did. We applied this money in wrong sectors. We applied this money to exaggerated projects implemented at exaggerated costs, inflated costs. So it cannot pay back, Mr. Speaker. That is why the country is in distress, because we applied money which was not giving us returns to be able to pay those loans and at very high interest rates. Mr. Speaker, right now, even I hear people saying, let us not borrow anymore. You are cheating yourself. You are cheating yourself. Any government which comes into power today must borrow for two reasons. Number one, COVID pandemic has hit the whole world. The whole world is borrowing, including America. What of Kenya? You cannot cheat yourself and cheat the public that you are not going to borrow. Where will you get money? Right now, the development budget is only 370 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, another reason why we must borrow, you cannot start a road in my place, which is 70 kilometers. Only 20 kilometers has been done, and you are telling me you can now not borrow money to complete it. Then why did you start that road? How will you pay back the money you have borrowed to do the 20 kilometers? We must borrow as a country. We must raise the debt ceiling as a country. Let us not cheat ourselves. And we must borrow more money. All these things you are saying out there in the politics, it's pure politics. You are wasting Kenyans' time. Kenya must borrow. The only thing we must ask ourselves, where are we borrowing, at what rate, and to do what? Those are the three questions we need to ask. We have made mistakes before. Don't make it again. Borrow money from where it should be borrowed, at concessionary rates, and borrow reasonably, and apply it prudently. Those are the things we need to ask. But cheating Kenyans out there, and you are an economist, and you stand before cameras to tell Kenyans you will not borrow. Who are these fools you are cheating? You cannot cheat Kenyans. Kenyans must borrow. The only thing is to ask how much, and for what, and at what rate. And you will agree with me, I'm not going to be in Parliament from August of this year, but those MPs who will be here will bear me witness that what I said today, and it should remain on record, Kenya is going to borrow. Whether we bring an angel to become the president of this country, that president must borrow. We only need a responsible leader who will borrow prudently and apply that the funds prudently, and will stop theft in this country. That is where we are dying. Theft is killing us. A lot of money we borrow is stolen. And the stealing has permeated all facets of the economy and all sectors and arms of government. Executive people are stealing, and the theft is not stopping. We thought it would stop. It is not stopping. You still hear of KEMSA scandals, billionaires, and you wonder why these people can't be arrested. These thieves must be arrested. That today thieves and yesterday thieves and even tomorrow thieves must be arrested. DCI, please, and EACC, do your work. Arrest people who are stealing public funds. These are the people who are putting us into problems. Anybody stealing, please, let them be arrested. I think that is what is going, and we need a leader who is committed to fighting corruption. You cannot campaign throughout for 5 years and you cannot even mention corruption in your speech. And then you expect leaders, and we know that our biggest problem as a nation has been caused by corruption. Then you want to convince me to vote for you? I am scared. I am afraid. I don't want such a president. Please, God, forgive me. Save Kenya. Not to have a president who does not care about corruption. We need a president who will say corruption is bad and we must stop it. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I would have said so much. But I want to stop there because I know my colleagues would also want to talk, including those who have caused this problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Mbadi, today you have spoken to my heart. We need to say these things, and that we must manage our debt. We must manage our debt in an orderly way, and no, you are not going to add. One day you've just walked in, just relax. You cannot add to what the Honorable Mbadi has said. The Honorable Mbadi has spoken. And I think we need to manage our debt well in this country. And that is the message that I have got that he has spoken to me. The Honorable Wahungu Wamalu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I want to congratulate Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi for coming up with this bill. Mr. Speaker, as we move forward, one of the rules in this House, Mr. Speaker, before a bill comes to the second reading, we must have a committee report. Mr. Speaker, there's no committee report up to now. And the committee report is supposed to have been done by the Committee of Finance. So the question you're asking, Mr. Speaker, we cannot put rules in place and we break our rules. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, as we move forward, this bill, Mr. Speaker, has overstayed on the shelves. And Mr. Speaker, why this bill is coming in place is we did not have full disclosure, Mr. Speaker, as far as the loans are concerned. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we are supporting this bill, that there must be an establishment.
The Honorable Chris Wamalwa, I think you need to correct the record. The report was shared. There's a report on this.
The report, when was it shared? Today, when I was in the table office, Mr. Speaker, I was told the report is not yet there.
No, the record,
and I've been looking for that report.
The record
if
shows.
it is there, then it's good. But it's important for me to have pointed out, because this bill was moved last, before the report was shared. So next time, the relevant bodies in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, they must share the report timely. Mr. Speaker, as I move forward, can you protect, Mr. Speaker, the consultations at high level, Mr. Speaker, should be at low level so that we can allow people to debate.
Members, the Honorable Wahungu desires to be heard as he should be. Kindly let us lower the consultation.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, as I move forward, I want to quote two professors from Harvard School. This is Professor Kaplan and Professor Norton, who developed the balanced scorecard model. And this is what they said, Mr. Speaker, that you cannot manage what you can't measure. And today in this country, Mr. Speaker, we don't have accurate records showing how much has the country borrowed up to date. Mr. Speaker, as we speak right now in 2019, there was a motion on the floor of this House where members were being convinced, Mr. Speaker, that we should increase the debt ceiling to 9 trillion. And Mr. Speaker, the reason was like this. We were to get the concessional loans, Mr. Speaker, because concessional loans normally you pay back at a longer period, and when it comes to the interest rate, Mr. Speaker, it is somehow insignificant. And the objective of these concessional loans, Mr. Speaker, was to restructure the commercial loans that the government had borrowed. Mr. Speaker, up to now, we've never been told whether the rescheduling of these loans was done or not. But from the performance, Mr. Speaker, it shows clearly, Mr. Speaker, there's loud consultation, Mr. Speaker. I can hardly speak. Mr. Speaker, I need your protection.
Honorable members, the elder of the House, the Honorable Chris can't breathe.
Absolutely. And the chair of PAC should listen to this, Mr. Speaker. Because when we increased the ceiling to 9 trillion, the critical objective was to borrow, get the concessional loans, which are paid back at a longer period and a lower rate, so that they restructure the commercial expensive loans. The question you're asking, and the body should be answering this because it's part of the budget committee, whether the restructuring of these commercial loans was done or not. Because we've never gotten any report. At that time, Mr. Speaker, we need a thorough follow-up because that was the critical objective why we increased the ceiling to 9 trillion. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of this body that Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi is trying to put across, one of the critical functions we've read, Mr. Speaker, it is supposed to maintain a register of all loans that are advanced to the national government, the county government, and their entities, including the guaranteed by the national government. It is important because, Mr. Speaker, some times back, I had raised a question on the floor of this House to be told how much loans are we owing. We've not had the correct figures. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we've had people talking of 8.2 trillion, others talking of 9 trillion, others talking of 11 trillion. And it will add value, Mr. Speaker, if this bill passes, because it will be a one-stop shop, Mr. Speaker, whereby anybody will be able to know. When you read Article 35 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, it's clear. It says Kenyans have a right to information. If members of Parliament, even those on the Budget Committee, up to now, we don't even know which one is the correct figure, Mr. Speaker. But if anything to go by, if we go by 8.2 trillion of what the Budget Committee has put in place, is it good enough, Mr. Speaker? When we increased the ceiling in 2019 to 9 trillion, it is supposed to have gone up to 2024 in June. But if by now in 2021 we've already gone 95%, Mr. Speaker, on a pro rata basis, it shows we're not doing pretty well. It is true, Mr. Speaker, governments must be borrowed, but they must borrow wisely. And as you borrow wisely, Mr. Speaker, you must bring programs that are going to add value. Programs, Mr. Speaker, that are going to be development in nature. If we are going to borrow, Mr. Speaker, and as Honorable Badi puts it, you are going to hire people of NYS to go and clean Kibera streets. That is wrong. Because the money we borrow, Mr. Speaker, it should be focused on infrastructure, things to do with the development. At the moment, Mr. Speaker, the rule of thumb internationally, when you want to look at the borrowing and the GDP, that is the ratio that is being used. When President Moi left power, Mr. Speaker, Kenya had borrowed around 650 billion or so. When Mwai Kibaki left power, he had left the debt ceiling. At that time, we had borrowed up to around 1.8 trillion. But look now the way Jubilee government has borrowed, Mr. Speaker. It has gone on a spending spree, Mr. Speaker. And the rule of thumb, as it says, the ratio of the GDP, when Mwai Kibaki left government, the percentage, the ratio of borrowing to the GDP was around 47-50%. And the international standard, Mr. Speaker, in the developing economies, the rule of thumb is it should be around 50% in the economies that are developing. We cannot compare ourselves to the United States of America, or you compare ourselves to Japan, where borrowing is in excess of 100%. We are a developing economy, Mr. Speaker. We are not a developed economy. As we speak right now, the Jubilee government When you look at the ratio of public debt and the GDP, it's already 100%, Mr. Speaker. This is something that you must be examined, so that when we borrow, the borrowing must be focused towards programs of development in nature. And Honorable Makali mentioned it. How has the distribution been done in terms of these programs? They are skewed. And when we borrow, Mr. Speaker, the burden goes to the common mwananchi. I remember the slogan at that time, during Mwai Kibaki's time, that kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea. As we borrow, it is the common mwananchi who is going to pay in terms of taxes and levies. When you look at the cost of fuel right now, Mr. Speaker, as we speak, right now, 60% of the cost of fuel is attributed to the tax and levies. Why has this been increased? Because of the obligation, Mr. Speaker, the country has to meet when it comes to the issues of paying the debt. So as we move forward, Mr. Speaker, we are not saying borrowing should not be done, but let's borrow based on our capacity. Let's not borrow as if we are in the United States, Mr. Speaker, or as if it's in Japan. This is why it is wrong, Mr. Speaker. And as we move forward, Mr. Speaker, reports have been tabled in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, showing 30% of the GDP goes into wastage through corruption, Mr. Speaker. We have agencies that fight corruption. And when you look at the level of wastages, Mr. Speaker, particularly post-handshake, when Honorable Badi talks about the issue of KEMSA billionaires, the KEMSA billionaires, Mr. Speaker, it is coming as a result of the post-handshake. And the people who have been mentioned, Mr. Speaker, widely on these KEMSA billionaires, they are affiliated on the handshake, Mr. Speaker. So the truth of the matter is this. Let's look at this matter and handle it objectively, Mr. Speaker. This is a matter that must be looked effectively. My friend here was talking Luoland, the other side. Now he's just jumped here. He doesn't even know what I said, Mr. Speaker. Maybe he's one of the beneficiaries of KEMSA billionaires. Somebody who is corrupt is corrupt. And Mr. Speaker,
the Honorable Chris Wamalwa, now you have attracted the point of order that Wandai wishes. It is now a proper point of order. The Honorable Wandai,
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the Honorable Chris Wamalwa to refer derogatively to the Luo nation in the manner he has done
the Honorable
on
Chris
the floor of the
Wamalwa,
National
just
Assembly?
withdraw that, please.
Can he withdraw and apologize to the great people of the Luo community?
Just withdraw that.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize, but I never say that. He was speaking to my friend, Honorable the MP for Bondo. He was speaking Luo. That's what I said. He was speaking Luo. I never said the Luo nation, Mr. Speaker. And every language is allowed in this house, Mr. Speaker.
You have apologized, you cannot...
So I've withdrawn the statement, Mr. Speaker. So on the way forward, Mr. Speaker, the government that comes in 2022 is only God who knows who will be forming the next government. The budget policy statement, Mr. Speaker, it is supposed to give priority areas as far as expenditure is concerned. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, for us to increase the bracket of paying taxes, Mr. Speaker, that's why we are focusing on the bottom-up economic model, Mr. Speaker. And we do support what Honorable Musalia Mudavadi mentioned, him himself as an economist, Mr. Speaker. It was important for us to put in place, because this BPS, Mr. Speaker, up to now, it was withdrawn from the order paper. Up to now, we don't understand why.
The Honorable Chris, your time has run. The Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, member for Kiharu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. And I want to support Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi on the transparency in far as borrowing and public debt is concerned. And Mr. Speaker, my thought is that we should actually elevate the authority into a commission, because we need a standalone institution that is totally independent. And it's also because, Mr. Speaker, our country is currently indebted in a way that is unsustainable. Mr. Speaker, comparatively, our nation, our African peers, and even beyond Africa, our economy and our country is in red. We have also seen commentaries across the world in terms of the indebtedness of our nation. And therefore, this is a matter that is out there, and Mr. Speaker, it pinches more to us as Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, we have actually borrowed beyond the legal limits as a country. This House has set a limit of 9 trillion Kenya shillings insofar as the domestic and the foreign debt combined is concerned. And Mr. Speaker, it was very embarrassing sitting here and listening to pedestrian arguments from some of the people who actually hold even positions of leadership in this House, who, Mr. Speaker, clearly do not know the condition of the debt in this country, have no correct figures, and therefore they do not even understand the role on which they hold in terms of leading this House. Mr. Speaker, the current debt in this country is a whopping 11.7 trillion Kenya shillings. And Mr. Speaker, therefore, that is even beyond what we have said here in Parliament. I say so because when you see at the data and look at the data as reported by the Central Bank of Kenya, it is in excess of 8.4 trillion, Mr. Speaker. But the debts that are guaranteed to SOEs, that is the state-owned enterprises, parastatals, and other government agencies, Mr. Speaker, they exceed 3.4 trillion. And Mr. Speaker, in the economic terms, in the economic angle, there is no other way to treat those debts other than loading them over to be part of the national public debt. Mr. Speaker, just last year, our country was actually forced by the IMF to be clear in terms of the actual debt in this country. And by around that time, Mr. Speaker, that is when we actually realized that our debt has not been including a very serious component, that is the guarantee by GOK to SOEs and other parastatals. Mr. Speaker, how do you treat a debt, for example, that is owed by a water company, let's say in Rwanda, in Busia, in Muranga, in Mombasa? These water companies are government entities, and any debt they borrow, Mr. Speaker, the guarantor is the government of Kenya. In the event, and in the many events that they do not, are not able to pay, Mr. Speaker, that debt is loaded over to be part of the national debt. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, our current debt is actually over 110% debt to GDP ratio. That is in excess massively of the over 70-something% that is reported here by the Treasury, Mr. Speaker, which is an actual lie. Mr. Speaker, a Kenyan citizen, even a child born today, is indebted to a tune of 255,000, what is called debt per capita. Every Kenyan, Mr. Speaker, is indebted, let me repeat, to a tune of 255,000. When President Kibaki retired, Mr. Speaker, that debt per capita was just around 48,000 per every Kenyan. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we can see the trajectory. Let me give the actual statistics because I had some other pedestrian ones. And Mr. Speaker, anyone can go to the CBK website. You can find out that when President Kibaki retired, the debt load in this country, the debt portfolio, the combined domestic and foreign, was around 1.8 trillion. By the time we are wrapping up the 2017 calendar year, it was just around 4.5 trillion Kenya shillings. And therefore, the net borrowing in the first year of this regime was just around 2.7 trillion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the handshake time, and these are the facts, from 2018 to date, that debt has accumulated to 11.7 trillion. And therefore, the net debt in the handshake era is actually 7.2 trillion Kenya shillings. Mr. Speaker, what we are asking, where is this money? We can't see it, we cannot trace it. I also had some other people, Mr. Speaker, in this House, referencing other economies like Japan. And I want to respond with the real Japan. Mr. Speaker, I agree with those who are bringing or entertaining the arguments that countries borrow. And they said Japan. Actually, the actual Japan debt to GDP ratio is around 237%, which I agree is beyond the 100% of Kenya. But Mr. Speaker, that is so pedestrian because there are issues that we must look at very closely when we are talking about the issue of public debt. Number one is cost. Japan, Mr. Speaker, Japanese government is paid to borrow. What do I mean? The 10-year yield of a Japanese board, Mr. Speaker, Japanese government board, is actually negative earning, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, the government of Japan is actually paid to borrow. The same equivalent, the 10-year bond of the government of Kenya, is in excess of 13%. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, there is actually nothing to compare. Number two, there is something called forex. Most of our debt that is foreign is dollar denominated. Mr. Speaker, our country has got over 5 trillion of foreign debt. Anytime there is a variation of only 1% of dollar to Kenya shilling, Mr. Speaker, our debt portfolio increases by over 50 billion. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we cannot compare Kenya and Japan or even with the US. But more importantly, there is something called net borrowing. When we talk about national public debt, we actually take the figure of the monies that the government has borrowed. In retrospect, Mr. Speaker, our country, Kenya, lends to no one. We only borrow. And I'm actually using the same site of Japan. The Japanese government, yes, they have borrowed in excess of 237%. But, Mr. Speaker, they have lent more money outside than they have borrowed. Actually, Japan is the highest net lender to the US government. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the Japanese government actually makes money in borrowing to lend. And therefore, there is no comparison also there. Mr. Speaker, let me give you a citation of how much our country has borrowed and how much a proportion can actually do to the livelihood of the Kenyan people. The 7.2 trillion is borrowed by this regime from the handshake era. Mr. Speaker, just half of that, just around 3.56 trillion, can do the following. And I want the Kenyan people to listen carefully. The president always talks about the 10,000 kilometers of road tarmacked by this regime. If we actually double the 10,000 kilometers to 20,000 kilometers at a rate of 60 million, when we have even put in a cut for the brokers, 60 million per kilometer, that's around 1.2 trillion, Mr. Speaker. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics gives us the data that Kenya has got 12 million households. When President Kibaki retired, 2 million of those had connection to electricity. Mr. Speaker, connecting the 10,000 remaining to electricity without even the government subsidy, and therefore we put it at 35,000, that is 350 billion, Mr. Speaker. If you are to connect the other 10,000 households to safe drinking water at 10 million households, Mr. Speaker, at 50,000 per household, that is around 500 billion, Mr. Speaker. If we are to build a level 5 hospital in every constituency in Kenya, that is 290 billion. Forget about the Tibet, Mr. Speaker. If we are to build a university of 1 billion Kenya shillings, if we add on even the SGR, Mr. Speaker, of 350 billion, that comes to below 3.5 trillion, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, what this borrowing has been perpetuating is something called development corruption. This government, led by those people in the highest offices, have captured our economy. Let me cite, for example, this expressway here. During President Kibaki's era, this expressway was to cost just around 25 billion. Currently, it's costing in excess of 80 billion, Mr. Speaker. Where is this money going? To pockets of some people. Let me also cite the SGR. We spent over 400 billion Kenyan taxpayers' money.
The Honorable Sotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity also to raise my voice on this very important bill. First of all, I'll start by thanking Honorable Bunyasi for bringing this very timely and very important bill to this House. Mr. Speaker, most of the people who have spoken here, most of the members who have spoken, they have digressed into political issues. But if I may go to the substance of the bill, Mr. Speaker, having read the report, I would say we have adequate legal safeguards on matters of debt management in this country. There are some functions that are performed by CBK. There is also a debt management department in the Treasury. But this bill will basically enhance the level of management of debt management in this country. This bill contains very, very useful provisions, but there are some gaps which the stakeholders have done justice to this bill. Going through the report, you will get an impression that various stakeholders, including Treasury, CBK, and others, Capital Market Authority, they have presented very, very useful suggestions which the committee has adopted. And I think that will further improve the bill in substance. There are a few contradictions in the bill, Mr. Speaker, which may interfere with the roles of CBK, Treasury, and other institutions like Unclaimed Asset Authority. But I think those issues have been raised up in the report, and they will do panel beating to ensure that the functions of the authority do not interfere with the constitutional functions of those offices. Mr. Speaker, there is only one thing that I thought the bill did not focus on, and that is the issue of public debt in relation to the fiscal policy. Because you cannot talk about the public debt without talking about the fiscal processes. How is that going to be done? Because I think one of the solutions to the issue of public debt is to put more sustained action around fiscal policy so that you generate more revenue so that there is no need to borrow. Mr. Speaker, I've had so many members raise the issue of borrowing. I think borrowing is a good thing. And I think no one in this world, whether you are a successful businessman or you are a private individual, can succeed without borrowing. You will have to borrow. You will have to borrow so that you can grow, including my friend Sankok there. He has to borrow to survive. So borrowing is good, but how you utilize the funds, it's very important. And I think this is the gist of the matter here. And this is why this bill is focused on how the money borrowed is going to be utilized. If you look at the statistics of other countries, you look at the statistics of the other countries, you realize that their debt to GDP is higher than Kenya. For example, if you look at the African context, Kenya is at about 65.6. Seychelles is 94%. Ghana is 78. Morocco is 76. Tunisia is 87.
Just hold on, the Honorable. So the Honorable Sankok, I heard you say that you have never borrowed. If you have never borrowed, I want to let you know that you are one of the lucky few in the world who have no debt. And we wish you well, and we wish you to continue in that way. So that is, you are fortunate. You are fortunate. Just
Mr. Speaker,
so proceed, the Honorable Sots.
You know, he's trying to eat into my time. So what I'm trying to say, other countries have higher debt to GDP ratios. South Africa, which is a bigger economy, is doing 80 debt to GDP. And as that has been said, even US is 128, Venezuela 350, Brazil 89. So what is important here is not the borrowing, is how do you utilize the money you borrowed. And I think that's where our focus should be, that we need to ensure prudent borrowing and prudent utilization of the funds borrowed. Now, Mr. Speaker, coming to the issues members have raised, is the issue, where did the rain start beating us? Mr. Speaker, I am happy that those who have caused this problem are the ones who are talking louder on the issue of public debt. We know when this side, led by our leader, was talking about Eurobond, they were quiet. When this side, through our leader, was talking about SGR. And SGR, Mr. Speaker, the amount of money spent on SGR could build this country 17 similar SGRs. It could build 154 superhighways. So the Jubilee government, especially in the first term, should tell us how this money was utilized. Eurobond, the country borrowed up to 780 billion shillings on Eurobond. When we raised this matter, our colleagues on the other side, who are now preachers of debt problem, were quiet. And again, Mr. Speaker, we must ask ourselves, where did it start beating us? In the 90s, there is something that IMF and World Bank introduced in this country called the structural adjustment programs, which led into conditional loaning by IMF. This is where the problem started. And we know who are in the Ministry of Finance that time. We know the people who introduced this. They are the ones who are talking loud about public debt. The structural adjustment programs led to layoffs in civil service. It led to removal of subsidies. We are talking about high fertilizer prices. Where did it start? It also led to lack of independency in the management of economic policy in this country, because economic policy in this country is donor-driven. So when you talk about debt problem, and you want to make that debt problem be the handshake problem, we are telling you, please do not open the can of worms. Because we have enough information to throw it back at you, that the problems of this country started with the structural adjustment programs with the people who are on the other side, trying to become preachers of good economic practices. So, Mr. Speaker, and we have seen scandals. Some of the money that has been borrowed has been used badly through scandals. Goldenberg, Kimwarel Dump, Eurobond, and many others. So we would like to have an explanation before you start talking about public debt and how you want to lower food prices. We want to ask you to address these issues of where did the rain start beating us. It started beating us through corruption, and we know the corruption that is there. It started beating us with the structural adjustment programs that were punitive to the people of Kenya. But all that said and done, Mr. Speaker, this is a good bill. The amendments are good, and I think it will add a lot of value to this country in terms of public debt management. For those few remarks, I support.
The Honorable Ntoimaga Musa, member for Samburu North. He's not in the House. The next on the list is the Honorable Nyika Luambura, member for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, debt management is a serious issue in the financial and economic management of a country. Sure, as everybody has said, no country, no company will grow without taking debts. But the issue is how the debt is managed. It's right from the time of borrowing the debt, for what is it being borrowed? How is it going to be used? What are the risks that are associated with that particular debt? It is there where we have a problem. We are mentioning many instances in this country, the SGR, the Eurobond, the dams. All these are actually just showing that we actually need a way of managing our debts. The SGR, for example, leave alone the high cost of it. First of all, the feasibility that was done indicated that it was going to run all the way from Mombasa to Uganda, passing through Kisumu and Eldoret. Now, if you have a feasibility and then you actually don't implement the project according to the feasibility, you do it halfway, you do not expect it to give returns because the facts are not being properly used. And I said here earlier, Mr. Speaker, that when we have an issue of national importance on which we all agree should be addressed, every time we try to bring in politics, we know when politics comes, logic flies out of the window. I think we should train ourselves to leave out politics, because in this situation, nobody will say they're actually free from it. If you look at when SGR started, when the Eurobond, I remember when the Eurobond came, we were actually in very serious situation. I myself actually was in record as talking against Eurobond and how the money was to be used. There was no handshake then. So my summary is, do not bring politics when we are discussing national issue where there's actually an agreement that we need to save our country. Right now, Mr. Speaker, the country is at crisis in relation to debt. And I think it is again the same issue. How have we used the debt? How have we looked at the debt in context of our own economy? We are saying the ratio of debt to GDP, we are quoting different countries, but we know that for a country like ours, the ratio should be 55%. We are at about 70. Now, we then don't have to compare it with other countries because their level of growth is different, their ratio is different. So we are obviously above what would be expected for us. When we talk of the ceiling that we did, again, I remember I was in this parliament, we were doing the ceiling, we brought it to 9 trillion. There were a lot of issues that were raised and what should be done and measures that should be taken to ensure that the debt is properly managed. That is when we actually raised the ceiling. Now, our debt is about 8.2 trillion, we are saying, but people are using different definitions, it's going to 11. Again, Mr. Speaker, that then calls for a proper system of managing it where our data is agreed on. The definition of a debt is agreed on. You don't bring in guaranteed debts if that is not in the definition. So, Mr. Speaker, I therefore think that this bill has come at a very appropriate time. Mr. Speaker, the concern is so much that for the first time, for as long as I can remember, the Budget and Appropriation Committee has brought in a report, a separate report on debt management, something that has never happened before. So we are really realizing as a country that this is something we need to manage. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. It has come at the right time, and it has the structures that we need. If you look at the structure, we have structured it as an authority and with functions. I've noticed, Mr. Speaker, I've gone through it. It's actually a very broad function. It is a service authority. To some extent, it's also a management authority, and also it is a regulating authority. So it is have all these functions. But I'm sure that as we implement it over a period of time, if we apply logic and leave out politics, then we will find out how to harmonize all these so that it does what we all want. If we continue with this kind of blame game in politics, all these structures we are putting in place in this house will not serve this country. They will actually be badly structured. They will not be properly implemented because politics will even interfere with implementation. I think when we are out there campaigning for opposition, that's okay. We can say anything. But when we come to this house, I think we should confine ourselves to the facts and the figures and the data that will bring good results to the people of this country. Structures like this are not discriminatory as to your political persuasion. If they affect the cost of living, everybody suffers. So I think this is a bill that has come at the right time, and I really, really congratulate Honorable Bunyasi for bringing this. I like the structure that he has put in place. The membership actually is appropriate. If you look at the people that we need or the offices that we need, they are all there. The only thing I've noted, Mr. Speaker, this bill actually also affects the counties, and yet in the membership we have actually not included representation from the county. I've discussed that with the mover, and I think that is something we can bring in an amendment so that we get somebody representing the Council of Governors. Because if you look at clause 12, Mr. Speaker, you will find that this bill gives the authority for the counties to seek support, get support for managing their debts. They can have debts, but we know a lot of the problems we blame the governors on are actually structural problems, capacity problems that the counties need support for, not blame. And therefore, if this bill comes in with that recognition that the counties will need that support so that they can manage their debts, I think it's a good start. Mr. Speaker, this bill also in clause 18 creates the position of a registrar of loans. So that register, again here we were arguing, what are the loans we have in the country? When this House and people who are able to search have different sources of information and therefore are not clear that the amount of loans, who has them, what they have done, that is exactly when we need to have registrar so that it is authoritative and it is the only source we quote, so that people don't quote Google data, because that may not be relevant for our situation. Mr. Speaker, I also support this bill because it gives a very clear relationship between the national government and the county governments. And it brought out something that was here yesterday when we were discussing another bill. It is very clear when it is talking of the national government, it is talking to the cabinet secretary. And when it is talking of the county, I think that is in clause, in part 5, in clause 9. The role of the cabinet secretary as representing the national government. And then when it is dealing with the county government, it's very clear they are talking of the CEC at the county who is responsible for financial policy at the country. Again, that is part 4 in clause 44. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that will help us. But what I've realized, the powers it has and the control it will have to put over us, managers, the powerful managers in treasuries and even in central bank, is such that if it is not protected, the authority may actually be fought a lot. But we need it. And if need be, we look at the amendments and see where we can give it the support so that it has the authority and the security it needs to implement what we need. We must borrow, but we must manage the debt to give us the results we need, instead of burdening our children and our grandchildren with loans that did not serve and will not serve them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Honorable Nyikal. We are the people on the stage now. The world gives you only 15 minutes to dance, and this is the time for this parliament to dance. So it is our duty to do what we must do rightly for our country. Well spoken. The Honorable Duale, member for Garissa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Township.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm a happy man because the Honorable Bunyasi's bill is on the floor since last week. And for those who don't know Honorable Bunyasi and looking at his bill, Honorable Bunyasi worked with the World Bank at a very senior level before joining politics. So he knows what he's doing and he knows what public debt is. Mr. Speaker, this debate on public debt, whichever side of the political divide you will be, you must discuss it. It is the right time. This baby will be discussed in the next 6 months. For those who, because they are on the wrong side of history, because of the handshake, and they want to defend it, I want to tell them that President Uhuru Kenyatta is not a candidate. Honorable Raila Odinga is a candidate. So you must choose. It's going to be a very integral part of the discourse to the general election, because public debt affects each and every Kenyan in the villages that who we represent in this house. And Mr. Speaker, what are we saying? And I want to go on record, and I want to challenge our friends. Let us not discuss this thing in a very pedestrian way. Let us discuss with the facts and figures. The Minister for Finance, as currently today, Mr. Speaker, has violated Article 211 of the Constitution and the PFM Act, Section 50, subsection 2A of that law of 20 2012. Why do I say so, Mr. Speaker? Yes, I agree, and I'm happy. I don't know why they are not allowing this House to discuss. The Budget Committee tabled the budget policy statement, which is a fiscal framework in preparing the national budget, both for the national government, which they have given 2.2 trillion, which they have given 390 billion to the counties. They have given 38 billion to Parliament, and they have given 18.8 billion to the judiciary. Mr. Speaker, this House must be cognizant how much did they allocated to the consolidated fund services. In servicing debts, they have allocated 967 billion, close to 1 trillion. In a budget of 3.3 trillion, 1 trillion is going to service debts. Mr. Speaker, whoever will form government, and let me go on record, whether it is the Azimio team, which is very unlikely, or the Kenya Kwanza team, or the Oka, which is far unlikely, if they don't fix this economy within the first 18 months, including ourselves, Kenya Kwanza, this economy will collapse and it will go the Greece way. So we must discuss it. Whether you're in Azimio, whether you are in Kenya Kwanza, whether you are in the, if you are not the two horses, whether you are the donkey and you are Oka, you must discuss it. Because in 6 months, President Uhuru Kenyatta will hand over to you an economy that cannot last in your hands for 12 to 18 months. Mr. Speaker, it is not about whether Aden Duale was the leader of majority, whether Ichungwa was the chair of budget. And I want members to read the Hansard. The budget committee of this House since 2013 have been recommending to the National Treasury that the debt level in our country is untenable and we must restructure debt. Mr. Speaker, let's pick. There are 4 categories of debts or where we borrow from. There is a multilateral, the World Bank, IMF, ADB, AFP. There is the bilateral, led by China. We have the commercial, domestic, the commercial banks, and we have the international sovereign bond. These are the 4 areas. But Mr. Speaker, today 77% of our debt from the bilateral is from China. Why did this administration, particularly in its second term from 2018, why did they borrow more from China, Mr. Speaker? It's because of corruption. It's because Chinese were giving 10%. It's because China, Mr. Speaker, in Africa, is giving and taking back the money. They are bringing their own parastatal, their own companies to do the roads. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Dini Nyoro said something. This, you see, express highway. During Kibaki's time, the World Bank refused to fund it because the World Bank, in its estimate, said this express highway can be built within the framework financial resource of 15 billion. Kibaki government and those who sit in that cabinet, including Honorable Raila Odinga, approved and signed the contract for 23 billion. Speaker, the Jubilee administration in its second term raised it to 63 billion. Today, as we sit here, it's going to cost the Kenyan people 84 billion. So, Speaker, more fundamentally, we are told this is a private-public partnership. But if you look at the budget and the appropriation reports of this House, the ministry levy certain amount to this road. And I want to ask Kenyans that when this express highway is built, like it happened in Nigeria, one morning Kenyans should refuse the toll station and they should use this express highway for free. It happened in Nigeria. Because how do we pay through the petroleum levy and appropriation of this House, and then we are being told we pay for that toll station? Mr. Speaker, this express highway is a manifestation of what we call dynasty versus hustlers. You are telling the dynasties to go up because they can pay. And you want the millions of Kenyan hustlers who bought their cars through hire purchase to live in the traffic jam for them to reach home. This is a clear manifestation of dynasty versus hustler. Let me come to this debt issue. Mr. Speaker, I want my colleagues to challenge me on records. Kenya borrowed 7 billion, over 7 trillion during the period of the handshake between 2018 to 2019, when there was no cabinet that took place because the presence of William Ruto was making some people have constipation. Mr. Speaker, cabinet did not approve. And Mr. Speaker, we will challenge this house. I was a former majority leader. All those bills that were brought to this house without a cabinet memo, Mr. Speaker, within the reading of the Constitution are illegal. There was no cabinet that set the last 1.5 years. And then we are being told we are discussing government bills in this house, including the budget policy statement. Mr. Speaker, President Moi left at 650 billion. And people should not glorify Moi. People borrow in tandem with the growth of the economy. So 650 Moi, he couldn't borrow more than that. In fact, he left at 2002, the late Moi. It's good he left. If Kibaki did not come in, if Moi's preferred candidate could have come in and the extension of Moi regime could have continued, Kenya could have collapsed, Mr. Speaker. But when President Kibaki took over and he fixed the economy, and the leaders who will come after August 9, they must know that whether it is William Ruto, Musalia Mudavadi, Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, you are being handed over an economy that is bleeding, and you better have serious advisors and economists to sit behind you in the next 6 months to give you a focus of how you'll fix this economy. It's a reality. I am a Kenyan. Mr. Speaker, Kibaki left, in fact, by June 2013, President Kibaki left at 2.1 trillion. The first term of President Uhuru, he borrowed close to 2.7 trillion. That is visible. We built many roads, including my own constituency, Garissa Modogash, 140 kilometers. We improved the infrastructure of the Kenya Port Authority, the Kenya Airport Authority. We invested in geothermal energy. Mr. Speaker, finally, this 8.3, the minister is not telling us how much commitments, 3.7 trillion commitment loans, Honorable Munyasi will tell you, which we are paying for. Speaker, we are at 11.7, and the minister did not come to this house for approval. And we are saying, Ukuru Yatani, not today. After this government leaves, you will.
Honorable Dwale, it is good that that last comment is not on record. No, it is not on record, and the speaker did not hear it. But it just leaves me wondering. I mean, why is everybody fighting to take over this poison chalice? I will give the next chance to the Honorable Nyenze Edith, member for Kitui West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity to contribute to this bill. Actually, I note that the main objective of the Public Debt Management Authority Bill 2020 is to establish the Public Debt Management Authority as an independent body to manage the public debt in the country at both levels of government, that is the national government level and also the county level. The country's debt is actually rising at an alarming level, and therefore there is need to manage the same, to protect the current and future generations. And that's why this authority is being created, to try to manage, to try to control, to try to administer the public debt. Debt is not bad, because everyone, for there to be growth, then one has to take some loan and therefore incur some debts. But now the question is how to manage that debt. So the debt level in our country is quite alarming, as I've said, and that is 70% of GDP. And the question is, how is this debt being used? It's good to have a register whereby we would have a record showing after we borrow this amount of money, where does it go? Because where it's being used should be up in projects which will give back to the country and actually which won't be used to even repay this debt. Because if we just take loans and then without having proper use of them, of the funds, then we are likely to misuse that money through other ways, through corruption, through mismanagement, misappropriation, and therefore when it comes to repayment, it becomes a problem. So it's good to know where the money, have a register, where the money will be used. And that will be the work of this authority. And the other thing is that actually we incur debts when the ratio between revenue and expenditure does not balance. When the expenditure is so high, then we incur debts. Central Bank has been in charge of managing our debt, though we have in Treasury a department which deals with debts. But up to now, there is need to have an authority which will be independent, which its core mandate will be to manage, to control the debts. If this authority is not given independence, then we will be doing, we will just be creating it in impunity. It will not do the work which if it's not given independence. It should also be given enough funding to ensure that it carries out its work appropriately. And this is to try to reduce wastage through their management, to try to reduce corruption, to try to ensure that the country only borrows what it can pay back. So, Mr. Speaker, I actually support the authority to be put in place to ensure that there is a proper management of our public debt. But the country should also look at other expenses, especially which go to some parastatals, which are always funded, and they do not seem to give back to the community, to do the service they are meant to be doing. So it's good for the country to ensure that enterprises which are depending on the exchequer for survival and are not productive, we should actually do away with them. And also that government should live within its means, because if it lives within its means, then that means we will not have many debts. We will control the debts. So we should only borrow if we have a proper plan on how to repay the debts. And we should also enhance revenue collection so that the ratio between revenue and expenditure is actually reduced. Although I congratulate KRA because they are doing very well in revenue collection, which I hope is not killing the new startups and the small businesses. But I congratulate them since this time their revenue collection is very good. So we should actually keep on enhancing the revenue collection to ensure that the balance between revenue and expenditure is reduced, and this will mean not taking too much loans. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I support the creation of the new authority. Thank you.
Very well. The Honorable Jungle, member for Thika Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the creation of this authority, and I think there are three things that we need actually to look into this country. And just like any other enterprise, if you do not run a country like an enterprise, then you are doomed to fail. If we don't plan ourselves so that we can be able to run in a way where we are creating money for our country. And there are only 2 or 3 things I really want to say. If you're taking a debt, you must plan for it. You cannot take debt so that you can use it in consumer goods, in importations. If you take debt, part of that debt must be planned for development. If debt does not produce, it means then you cannot be able to pay for that debt. Number 2, when you plan for the debt, you must make sure that leakages are minimal. By leakages, I mean we have seen a lot of impunity in this country. We have seen a lot of stealing of public funds in this country. We have seen a lot of people, a lot of leaders who get into these seats. They don't get here so that they can build the country. They get here so that they can start milking the country. This, as a country, I think it's high time we decide where do we want to be? What kind of a country do we want to have? What kind of an economy do we want to have? And I can tell you what, if we can be able to address only the issue of corruption, this country will be different in a very, very short time. And I can tell you, even today, if you have seen now, the campaigns and the politics at the highest gear, the heat is on. But I've been looking at the parties that really want to take the executive power in this country. None of those parties or coalitions are anywhere saying zero tolerance to corruption. Nowhere anyone says that they're going to protect public funding. So basically, I find it very odd that everybody is going out there saying how they're going to develop this country. How do you develop the country if you do not address the issue of corruption? It is a mirage. It's not going to happen. Now, let me put it this way, and let me say also that the fact that we want to have an authority that oversees the public debt, I see it as a very positive step. Look at a situation where you have a dominant party taking the executive power in this country. Like what is happening in this parliament today. We have parties or coalitions of parties that have got majority power or majority members in this country. So whenever the government, the executive wants to borrow, they just need to whip their members. And the member has no leeway even of any argument. That is why you see debt ceiling is raised arbitrarily. There are no figures. There is no enough information. But nobody, especially people who belong to those dominant parties, they cannot ask questions why they have been whipped. And if they move the wrong way, of course, there are consequences in the party. But the authority is not aligned to any party. So I really welcome this authority because they can be able to make independent decisions. They can be able to ask questions. We can be able to call them in this August House to answer our questions when we have some. So I think this is totally the right direction that we are moving to. And finally, I want to say that when you take debt and you use it in the correct manner, you are likely to go very far. In fact, private companies that are doing very well, they are into a lot of debt, but because of the debt management, they go far. I want to say that, yes, we cannot get away from public debt. We are going to incur public debt, but the most important part is, can we use that public debt efficiently in a way that it works? I also want to encourage the current government that please, you have a lot of projects out there. that are not finished, finish them up, so that whichever advantage that we wanted to get, especially the road infrastructure, those roads will only start bringing money when they are finished and completed. Please make sure that all those roads are completed. And even in this one, I want to put one particularly in my constituency, that is in Thika East, a place called Muguga. It goes all the way to Gethima. That road has a lot of benefits to the people of Thika. I ask the current government and the current and the relevant ministry, please put money in that road. Let it get finished. We need to start using it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Kiambu area. The Honorable Kimani Kuria, member for Molo.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I would like to congratulate the Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi on coming up with this timely bill about debt management. Mr. Speaker, I would like to quote President Herbert Hoover, the 31st President of the United States, who said, "Blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the national debt." That is the sad reality that you're talking about now. That every person born now and in the future inherits a debt that's the responsibility to pay. But many people will ask then, how then do we do development if you're not borrowing? Ronald Reagan, the 40th president of the US, said that we do not have $1 trillion debt because we haven't taxed enough, but we have $1 million debt because we spent too much. And the biggest question, the biggest problem, and the only solution we have as a country is to manage our expenditure. Because as long as we continue to make roadside declarations on projects that are going to be done without due diligence on what is the value and what is the return from that project, we will continue. In economic terms, we call it a physical discipline. Mr. Speaker, according to the Constitution, we have had most members of the executive resign from their offices ahead of them going to seek political office. We have seen several cabinet secretaries, we have seen several principal secretaries and heads of parastatal resign. And Mr. Speaker, I'm almost certain that's going to take a few months before those positions are filled. What does that mean? Does it mean that with the resignation of the Minister for Agriculture, Cicely Kariuki, now there is no programs that are happening at the Ministry of Agriculture? Does it mean with the resignation of the Principal Secretary for Water, for him to go and vie for a political seat, then there are no operations in that particular state department? The answer is no. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, some of the current expenditures we have by the executive are actually not necessary. We have the appointment of CAS's, Cabinet Administrative Secretaries. Of course, it comes with a lot of staffing, a lot of budget for those offices. Those offices are not even legal in the Constitution, and therefore they did not even exist before. So what these roles that they do, these expenses that they incur, can those expenses be avoided? And therefore, Mr. Speaker, that's why I'm saying that the solution to our debt problem is actually physical discipline. We must be disciplined in how we spend Wanjiko's money, in how we spend our taxpayers' money. The Honorable Jango has done a very good contribution about the role of our political parties. When you listen to the debates, now you can tell which political inclination someone stands on how they support or oppose the issue of debt, on whether they approve the government to borrow more or not. And we saw this scenario change when the political inclination was different 1 or 2 years ago. As a parliament, as bestowed to us by Article 211 of the Constitution, about our role in debt management, we should take a responsibility as parliament and actually have a bipartisan approach to this matter. We should forget whether we are Kenya Kwanza or Azimio and tackle this issue of debt as Parliament of the Republic of Kenya, and not because of our political inclination. Because, Mr. Speaker, the decisions that we make for our people is this debt that we are accumulating for our children. It will be paid for all our children, irrespective of whether they are Kenya Kwanza or Azimio Kwanza children, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago, I raised on the floor of this House as per our standing orders to seek a statement from the Departmental Committee on Agriculture about fertilizer prices. And Mr. Speaker, such a priority area when Kenyans are tired about food prices, that question, Mr. Speaker, has not been prioritized even now. I have not received an answer from the Departmental Committee on Agriculture on the solution towards these fertilizer prices. And yet, at the end of the year, we'll cry again that the food prices have gone up. But like in my constituencies, this is a planting season. So if the Ministry of Agriculture has to provide a solution on the fertilizer prices, it has to be now when we are planting. Because if you lower these fertilizer prices in August or in September, then we are still going, it's not going to be helpful to us. Because by that time it will be too late. We will not have been able to plant enough to feed this country. Mr. Speaker, my constituents, some of my constituents are feeding their cows with cabbages and sukuma wiki. Carrots are being eaten by cows and goats from Molo because we are great farmers. And my farmers cannot understand the issue about food prices because they are growing the food. But the cost of growing this food is too high because especially of the cost of this fertilizer. And if you're going to address this issue, we must look at the issue of these farm inputs, Mr. Speaker. Politicians have spoken about the issue of debt. And they have spoken depending on their political inclination. But Mr. Speaker, I choose to take a slightly different approach. We have an institution called KIPRA in this country, an institution that is funded by government funds to do research on matters of public and on matters of public policy. And their report last year, they said that although our debt is sustainability is wanting, they pointed out at the key indicators about our debt sustainability that needs to be looked into. Mr. Speaker, the solvency indicators such as the present value of public debt as a percentage of GDP should be at 70%. Mr. Speaker, the present value of external debt as a percentage of our GDP should be at 55%. And as we speak, as the current debt sustainability or these two ratios that measure debt sustainability are way below the threshold. So forget the politicians, Mr. Speaker. Our policy makers are saying this debt sustainability is wanting, that we really need to look at the issue of this debt and look at these indicators and provide a solution. So when I hear some of leadership of this House saying we need to raise the debt ceiling, we need to raise the debt ceiling, are they talking as politicians or are they listening to policy makers in this country? Because that's what they are saying. So as I submit to Mr. Speaker, my request to this August House, this 12th Parliament, is please let us look at this issue of debt in a bipartisan manner. Let us forget which political inclination we follow, and let us make a decision that is good for our great country of Kenya. Let us manage this debt. Let us reduce our debt. Let us reduce our spending, because the only solution to this debt issue, Mr. Speaker, is fiscal discipline. And with that, I submit.
Thank you, Kimani Kuria. Well spoken. The Honorable Tandaza Sawa, member for Matuga.
Kwanza shukrani nyingi kwa Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia fursa hii niweze kuzungumza juu ya jambo hili muhimu sana ambalo linamuuma mwananchi katika pembe ya jamhuri hii yetu ya Kenya. Nichukue fursa hii pia kumshukuru Mheshimiwa Sakwa Bunyasi ambaye ni mtaalamu wa mambo haya ya madeni na mwanachama wetu wa ANC kuweza kufikiria kwa kitaalam kuona kwamba umefika wakati ambapo bila watu kama yeye kuweza kuleta miswada kama hii, basi Kenya itaangamia. Na itaangamia kwa sababu tunachukua madeni leo ambayo huenda sio sisi ambao tutalipa madeni haya. Ni madeni ambayo yatalipwa baada ya miaka 20, 30, 10, wengine hatutakuwepo. Inamaanisha basi wale ambao watalipa madeni haya ni vizazi vinavyokuja, ambavyo vizazi hivi tayari vina changamoto ya ajira, ina changamoto ya kwamba hawana pesa mfukoni, wana changamoto za kila aina, ili hali ndio tunatarajia waweze kulipa madeni haya. Na ndio maana mswada huu ni wa muhimu kuweka kiwango maalum kwamba licha ya vile ambavyo atakayekuwa kiongozi atataka kula pesa hizi, kwa sababu ukiangalia pesa nyingi ambazo zimechukuliwa katika madeni, fungu kubwa ni ile ambayo limeingia kwa mifuko ya watu. Huo ndio ukweli. Kwa hivyo licha ya kuwa kiongozi atakayekuwapo na aliyepo atakuwa labda na hamu na yeye kuona ni vipi anaweza kuongeza mapato yake ama mapato ya wachache kibinafsi, itakuwa anajua moja kwa moja kwamba hawezi kuenda zaidi ya kiwango fulani. Na hiki kiwango, hata kile ambacho tunatarajia kuweka, kwa maono yangu binafsi, ni kwamba tayari hakinufaishi na hakitawezekana. Nilikuwa nikifanya hesabu tu ya haraka haraka kuona kwamba kwa mfano kama tulikuwa na deni ya trilioni 2.1 mwaka wa 2018, hata bila kuomba fedha zingine, kwa sababu ya kuwa sisi tunaomba kwa pesa ya kigeni ambayo ni dola na pesa zingine, na tunatarajia kulipa deni hili kwa pesa hizo hizo, na ili hali uchumi wetu tunategemea zile rasilimali ambazo sio za lazima kwa wale tunaowauzia kwa pesa za kigeni. Kwa utakuta saa hizi bidhaa ambayo inatuletea hela nyingi zaidi ilikuwa ni maua. Maua haya tunayapeleka nchi za ugaibuni. Lakini ujue yule anayenunua maua si lazima anunue maua. Hili ni jambo la kustarehesha. Kwa hivyo wakati wowote akisema wacha nifanye mambo mengine, inamaanisha moja kwa moja hela hii ambayo tulikuwa tunaitarajia hatutaipata. Lakini vile vitu ambavyo sisi tunaagiza kutoka nchi za nje ni vitu vya muhimu. Tunaagiza madawa, tunaagiza mafuta ambayo tunahitaji katika uzalishaji, tunaagiza malighafi. Kwa hivyo sisi tunalazimika kuagiza vitu kwa bei ile ambao wao wanataka, ili hali vitu ambavyo sisi vingeweza kutupatia hela hizi kwao si lazima. Kwa hivyo wakati wowote utakuta kwamba hata tusipoomba pesa zaidi, lakini kwa sababu thamani ya dola inaendelea kupanda, basi moja kwa moja ule ceiling ambao tutakuwa tumeweka, ule mkakati ambao tutakuwa tumeweka kwamba hatuwezi kuzidi hapa, ni lazima tujue kwamba itazidi, kwa sababu deni linalumbikizika, kwa sababu ya kuwa zile pesa ambao tumeomba nazo za kigeni zinaendelea kupanda na shilingi yetu inazidi kurudi chini. Kuna njia mojawapo ambayo ingetusaidia kwa wale ambao watakuwa nahusika na mambo ya uchumi. Iwapo tungeweza kuimarisha uzalishaji wa vile vitu ambao na sisi tungeweza kupeleka nje. Na kwa bahati mbaya, ijapokuwa tunasema kwamba nchi yetu ni ya ukulima, hata chakula chenyewe saa hizi hatuna cha kutosha. Inamaanisha kile ambacho tunajivunia nacho kwamba uti wa mgongo wa nchi hii ni ukulima, hata chakula chenyewe hatuna. Kwa hivyo mbali na kuleta kutoka nchi za nje vile vitu ambavyo sivyo vya lazima kama chakula, bado inabidi tuweze baadaye kuchukua vitu kama hivi ambavyo tungeweza kuzalisha, na ili hali tungeweza kuzalisha ingeweza kuweka ile thamani ya shilingi yetu kidogo, ikawa inaweza kuwa na kiwango ambacho itapunguza deni ambalo liko nchi za nje. But la muhimu zaidi ambalo linanihuzunisha kwa upande wangu, nikija upande wa pwani kwanza kwa ujumla, tumezungumzia deni kubwa la SGR. Nafikiri hili ndio deni moja kubwa ambalo lilikuja kwa mpigo. Na tukiangalia deni hili, ijapokuwa sisi kutoka pwani na tumezungumzia swala hili, hatujakataa SGR, lakini ilichukuliwa deni SGR kumuumiza yule mtu ambaye anatarajiwa kulipa deni hili. Ukiangalia uchumi wa pwani kwa wakati huu na athari ambazo zimeletwa na SGR, zile biashara ambazo zilikuwako katika upande wa wana biashara wa clearing and forwarding, kutoka upande wa wale waliokuwa na magari ya kubeba ile mizigo, kutoka upande wa wale waliokuwa wana biashara za kuuza malighafi, yani spare parts, utakuta biashara hizo zimekufa. Na ni biashara ambazo zilikuwa zinawasaidia yule mkazo wa pwani, ilikuwa zimeajiri watu wengi sana. Sasa limechukuliwa, biashara hizo zinaumiza, hazipo, watu wamerudi manyumbani, hawana ajira, na ule mradi ambao umefanywa unatarajiwa pia mtu wa pwani yule yule aweze kulipa deni hilo. Pengine itafika wakati ambao tutaonelea, na naona ni vizuri kwamba wakati deni limechukuliwa na linawafaidi watu wengine na wengine hawafaidi kwa deni hilo, basi wale ambao wanafaidika waweze kulipa deni hilo, na wale ambao liliwaumiza deni hilo basi waweze kusamehewa, manake kwanza ndio wameathirika kupitia kuchukua kwa deni hilo. Madeni ambao tumeweza kuchukua, Mheshimiwa Spika, tumesema ni upande wa mabarabara. Mimi katika eneo langu la ubunge, Mheshimiwa Spika, kutoka dunia ianze, tuna kilomita 16 peke yake za barabara ya lami. Na ili hali tumechukua madeni kwa sababu ya barabara. Kulikuwa kuna wakati ambao ilikuwa imewekwa kwamba kila mwaka kutafanywa kilomita 10,000 za lami, lakini kwa upande wetu sisi watu wa Matuga kutoka dunia ianze, na hii kilomita 16 sio ya hivi majuzi, ni kilomita 16 ambazo zilijengwa mwaka wa 85. Kwa hivyo madeni haya ambayo yanachukuliwa yanafaidi wengine sehemu zingine. Kuna watu maalum ambao wanajua deni hili likija litawafaidi wao, lakini kwa upande wetu sisi watu wa Matuga, ikiwa ni barabara, hatujafaidi. Lakini la kusuhudisha ni kwamba bado tutahitajika kulipa madeni haya, na ndio maana nikasema labda itafika wakati kwamba wale ambao madeni yakichukuliwa wakifaidi kwa hayo basi walipe wao, sio kwamba wengine wale sisi tuishie kuna wa mikono kisha na sisi tuambiwe pia nyinyi ondokeni, karamu imeisha. Nafikiri hapa kuna tatizo kubwa sana. Na kuomba deni, unaomba na uganga wa deni ni kulipa. Wakati tunaomba tumetarajia tulipe na nini? Nafikiri hili ndilo swala ambalo kwa hali yoyote litamdhuru kila mwananchi, hata yule ambaye amenufaika na mikopo hii na madeni haya. Ukweli ni kwamba itafika wakati pia yeye atalilia kwenye kivo, kwa sababu vile ambavyo tumeomba mpaka sasa na uchumi wetu vile ambavyo ulivyo, kwamba mashirika yanafungwa, hakuna namna ya watu kupata ajira, moja kwa moja ni kwamba hatutaweza kulipa madeni haya. Na imelifikia wakati kwa kuna tetesi kwamba kuna mashirika maalum ambayo yalitumiwa kuhakikisha kwamba hii mikopo inapatikana. Na ikiwa mashirika haya basi yataweza kuchukuliwa, itakuwa ni fedheha kwetu, itakuwa ni aibu, tutaweza kuumia na bado tutakuwa tunadaiwa. Kwa hivyo la kumalizia ni kwamba wakati tunachukua deni, tuweze kuchukua deni tukijua tutalipa kupitia wapi. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na naunga mkono mswada huu wa kuhakikisha kwamba kuna shirika maalum la kuangalia masuala ya madeni.
The Honorable Okello Odoyo, member for Nyando.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you very much for granting me this opportunity, and on the same breath share my approval to this bill by Honorable Bunyasi. And I want to congratulate him for coming up with this. And this discussion, Honorable Speaker, could not have come at a better time. As we approach our elections, recently this has been one of the major discussion points by various political parties and presidential candidates under their ilk. And debts indeed have brought us down as a nation. The only hypocrisy and the epitome of it all, which has been exhibited by people who have put us into this ditch, and how I wish that they understand that this debt thing that now has become part of their campaign manifesto emanate from their own misgivings. And we hope that going forward, more realities will be coming out, and whoever has to be blamed, that will be apportioned at his doorstep. Honorable Speaker, there is nothing wrong with taking a debt. I remember when we joined this house, some of us had been living in the villages for way too long. And when we came here, the only recourse was to apply for mortgage so that we could have a place to stay within Nairobi. Of course, a mortgage has constantly been misunderstood, even by an organization, an authority such as Salaries and Remuneration Commission, thinking that this is a grant expended to members of parliament. Far from it, Honorable Speaker, this is a debt that we have an obligation as members of parliament to service. And in any case you dishonor, there are repercussions which are quite grievous. And therefore, a loan gives anybody an opportunity to expand their economic well-being. And the only disconnect is when these loans are not plugged into projects that change the lifestyles of the Kenyan people. And that is where we are today, Honorable Speaker. I was talking about hypocrisy that is being exhibited by our competitors. And I'm not afraid to say, Honorable Speaker, that a classical example is the Eurobond, which this country got 100 billion shillings. And record has it that that money never got to this country. Probably it is what is now causing all the furor that we see in the nation. People moving in choppers and buying loyalty of various politicians and supporters across the nation, Honorable Speaker. If we are not going to be told unequivocally what happened to Eurobond and many others that have been in place like Anglo leasing, then we are lying to ourselves as a nation when we have to put this as an integral part of our manifestos and policies going forward towards the next elections, Honorable Speaker. Our taxes are not enough, and that is why we have to go to the IMF and other breasthood institutions to cushion ourselves against what may, in essence, become a poverty line for the entire nation. So COVID has also played its fair share in bringing us to where we are today and the need now to go and borrow money outside there. But this has already been spoken by the previous speakers or the contributors, Honorable Speaker. When a nation is going for commercial loans as opposed to concessionary loans, Honorable Speaker, where you tend to pay within a very short period of time, and at the same time, Honorable Speaker, there are higher interest rates, then it does not make sense as a nation. So concessionary loans would always have a longer payment period, up to 20 years, Honorable Speaker. And besides that, the interests that are charged and accruing on those loans tend to be much lesser. So as a nation, this is the direction that we need to take so that we do not overburden the Kenyan taxpayer. Of course, we have been pushed to the limit, Honorable Speaker. A while back, the country was debating about the fuel prices, and we came to the realization that we have reached our elasticity point when it comes to fuel prices. You cannot add anything extra now. And those are the areas where we also derive our taxes that run our economy. And we then as a nation must diversify. And through diversification, you may want to consider agriculture and giving us inputs that are manageable in terms of pricing, fertilizers that are affordable to the farmer, so that we expand our horizon in that field, Honorable Speaker. If one would visit the Arab world, and I want to take Dubai for example, flying between here and Dubai using Emirates or any other airline within the Gulf is so cheap. You wonder why Kenya Airways would want to cash in and make so much money. At the end of the day, they don't get enough clients to fly in their planes, and in any event, those planes are not even beautiful to begin with, Honorable Speaker. Tourism has become our number 2 revenue earner, and that is known by all and sundry. Why can't we make these travels affordable? Why can't we make our hotels much affordable? You'll stay in what would pass for a 5-star hotel in Dubai, for instance. And what you pay here for a 2-star is much more than what you do pay for a 5-star hotel in Dubai, Honorable Speaker. Why can't we diversify various fields, including what has made Singapore what it is, the ICT, so that we make more monies, reduce our debt portfolio, and move this nation to the next level? Honorable Speaker, we will be going into our elections in a few months to come. I know this idea of discussing debts in public fora will not last more than a week. People will now be getting into other things. But, Honorable Speaker, how I wish that much attention will be put into this debt thing inside this House. And I'm glad that this is a house of record, a house of figures, where people would want to debate and debate soberly, as opposed to the insults and tantrums that we throw out there in the political field, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we gained from former President Kibaki a debt of 1.8 trillion that has since moved to about 8.2 trillion. Give and take another 800 or 600 billion shillings from parastatals, where the government acts as a collateral. So we are still below 9 trillion, which is the ceiling that has been passed by this House. But there is potential danger that if we engage in more borrowing, then we may surpass the ceiling, and that will be unconstitutional, and somebody has to be taken to account over this matter, Honorable Speaker. So I support this Bunyasi bill, so that we will be getting to know where money is going to come from. Is it a commercial loan? Is it a concessionary loan? What is it going to do? And what would be the benefits that will be accruing to the Kenyan people? And with that, I thank you for the opportunity, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Obo Mohamed, member for Lamu.
Asante Bwana Spika, kunipatia na mimi nafasi na mimi ni nene. Bwana Spika, mimi naunga mkono kuwekwa mamlaka simamizi ya madeni. Bwana Spika, kitu tu ninachoomba ni wakiweka mamlaka haya isio unakuja kusuluhisha kumbe umeleta tatizo zaidi. Ikiwa wao ndio wenye kupanga mambo ya madeni na ifaidi watu fulani. Wakipanga hili bodi, tuhakikishe watu waliotengwa kama sisi watu wa Lamu wako ndani. Kwa sababu Bwana Spika, sisi tuwashukuru watu wa Lamu kwa sasa. Mimi nataka hata madeni ichukuliwe zaidi, iongeze ipite 9 billion, hizo trillion ziongezwe, kwa sababu sisi ndio sisi na sisi tunaanza kulipa kwa haki, kwa halali. Kwa sababu kutoka Uhuru uanze, sisi alikuwa hatujapata barabara tamak, hatujapata sahihi Rais Uhuru Kenyatta kuweko, na sisi tumepata kilomita 120. Na hivi tunataka zaidi. Sisi nataka chukuliwe madeni zaidi, watengeze barabara ingine kwanza Dargoni mpaka Kiunga lami, barabara tuko nazo ni 3 Lamu. Ingine tengeze Mtangawanda mpaka Kizingitini, watu nao tukilipa wengine Kenya wakilipa madeni, iwe wanalipa pia na ile ya Lamu. Maana sisi tumekuwa tukilipa hizo siku zote, wengine wanafaidi. Sasa hii ni mpangilio mzuri, lakini mpangilio wenyewe uwe una haki. Na waangalie wasianze kukasirika kwao hawajapata, sasa ndio wanakasirika, wanataka madeni siwe mengi, siwe hivi. Nyinyi madeni ni mengi, lakini simwangalie ile miradi mko nayo. Miradi nao pia ni mingi wako nayo. Mwingine hapa analalamika hata na kilomita 16. Sisi hizo 16 tumepata sasa hizo 120. Na tunataka zaidi maendeleo. Tunataka kufungua Lamu East. Lamu East imeachwa, maendeleo mengi yafanywa Lamu West. Sasa wahalifu wanajificha kule kwa sababu hawaoni kama wao ni wa Kenya. Sasa tunataka watukue madeni, wafungue, madam ziwekwe, watu wafanye irrigation, maendeleo ifanyike Basuba, hakuna maendeleo yote yamefanyika huko. Kwa hivyo hii isiwe ni sababu ya kukanyaga ili wengine wale ambao hawajapata wakose. Kama ni madeni ichukuliwe, acha ichukuliwe, wale wengine nao wawe sawa na Wakenya wengine. Tupate maendeleo, na tukipata shida kule kupande kama boda la East, sio inamaanisha Wabajuni peke yake ndio wanapata shida. Ni Kenya nzima. Kenya ikitokea shida za Al-Shabaab, ikitokea kitu kule, aliyoko sehemu zingine wanahesabu Kenya imetokea attack. Haisabu ni Lamu. Kwa hivyo huwa ni shida ya watu wote. Bwana Spika, mimi nataka uwe na mpangilio, lakini ikiwa hata hii bunge itabidi iongezeke ceiling, iongezeke ili Lamu nayo ipate maendeleo. Asante Bwana Spika.
Well, honorable members, this bill had been allocated 3 hours and 30 minutes. We have now expended 3 hours and 20 minutes. And the remaining time, therefore, is 10 minutes. So I therefore give directions that when this business will be set down, it will be for the purpose of the mover to reply. So far, 21 members have contributed to it, and I think the contributions have been very enriching. And this is the kind of debate that one would wish to see going on the floor of this House. So I congratulate all the members who have had opportunity to contribute, and even those who have not had an opportunity to. I'm sure they are in support of what has gone on this floor. So, honorable members, the time being 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned till today, Wednesday, 23rd February 2022, at 2:30 p.m.